Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time for DC Spotlight for the week of March 26, 2024. A few days before WonderCon in Anaheim, which I'm sorry to say DC's not going to have much of a presence at. It is their home show. It's in their backyard. Once again, for I think the third year in a row, they're not exhibiting there. I don't even have many panels. I'm not really sure what's up. Kind of disappointing. But anyway, if you're going to be there, look me up. I will definitely be there hanging out. And I always love to run into listeners and people that watch on YouTube. So as far as the DC week, yeah, felt a little underwhelming this week is what I'll say. But I don't know. Maybe I'll find renewed enjoyment out of these books as we talk about them. I don't know. What do you think, Rocky?
Well, there was a lot of them again this week, and there's definitely something. I think you and I are both gonna have our usual rants. There's some titles like Flash we might have the same. I suspect we might have the same comments on. Maybe not. And but I will admit it did take a while for me to get through some of these comics this week, and I don't know what it is. If it's just maybe it was just the mood I was in or whatever, but it was, wasn't bad. But for the most part, there was only a couple of highlights for me. The rest were sort of like by the numbers, and I'll be ranting a little bit on a couple of them for sure, and I suspect maybe you will too. So I'm looking forward to hear your comments.
Yeah, maybe it's a product of I've been sort of catching up on other books that I've let go by the wayside. I mean, DC is the one publisher that I'm always caught up on, right? And all credit to this spotlight we do every week. But it really is true that different books, different publishers have a different flavor. You know, even if it's independent, it's completely separate. There's not a shared universe or what have you, which is the case with, a lot of different books from various publishers. All of Marvel, it's a shared universe. It's going to have somewhat of a similar feel, if you will. And I'm not saying Marvel's better than DC or DC's better than Marvel or what have you. I'm just saying you get, it's that whole thing of variety. And then I was reading some independent stuff, some Boom stuff recently. We only find them when they're dead. And it's just such a different feel, kind of almost a palate cleanser. So I don't know. Maybe that's why it felt like these books were a little bit down this week. I'm not sure. But anyway, we'll kick it off with one that does feel sort of different. It does stand out in its differences, I guess, from sort of the regular feel of the DC Universe. It's Batman Dark Age Book 1. Written by Mark Russell. Mike Allred is the artist. Laura Allred on colors. Dave Sharp on letters. Now, we had Superman Space Age previously. And that Superman Space Age book is set in the same universe, I guess, if you will, as this Batman Dark Age. This was wildly different. And not necessarily what I expected. Different take on Batman. Space Age was, although it was a different take on Superman, it still felt like there were some similarities there in the Superman book. And I talked to Mark Russell about it on the show, when we had him on to talk about Space Age being nominated for an Eisner. And I basically said that the Space Age story that he was telling, that Superman felt like the same Superman that was in his Man of Tomorrow, Future State Man of Tomorrow book. And he basically confirmed that it was. So this is all kind of set in that, eventual possible future, if you will. So I thought that was really kind of interesting, but based on the fact that the crisis is coming, this is set sort of in the early to mid 80s. The crisis is coming. There's no way to stop it. There's no way to avert it. Pariah was a character in Space Age. He's a character here. In fact, he's the head of Wayne Enterprises. They find a way to basically take Wayne Enterprises away from Bruce Wayne. And it's an interesting tale, I would say. I could see why a lot of longtime Batman fans might not like this, but I thought it was interesting. I don't know. A lot of times with Mark Russell books, I've got to kind of sit with it and digest it for a little while. And I read this a few days ago. I think I like it, but I think I need another issue to be sure. Because, again, this is a very different Bruce Wayne, and I could see longtime Batman fans not really caring for it. I mean, he for lack of a better term, he's a juvenile delinquent in this. He didn't go and see his parents murdered. He stayed home. They left him at home. They went out. They were killed. He found out about it later. He still feels the loss, but maybe it's not quite so intense because he wasn't there. They weren't killed right in front of him. And he's sort of lost, and he's trying to find himself, if you will. Alfred is still Alfred, but yeah, it's a different take on Bruce, and I could see some people not liking it. But I don't know. Again, going back to that idea of something different, variety, diversity in storytelling. I don't know. It kind of worked for me, but again, jury's still out. We'll have to wait and see. It's always great to see Pariah. I think he's an underused character, but as far as the art goes, I've said before, I'm not a big fan of Mike Allred's art. He uses a very, very heavy line weight, and I'm just not a fan of it. But that's just personal preference. I know there's a lot of people that love his art. He's a fantastic visual storyteller. I've never had a problem with following along with what he's doing. His images feel so kind of stale or static to me. Like there's very little movement to them because, again, his line weights are so thick. But anyway, what do you think of this, Rocky? Did you enjoy it?
I did. And I actually share your general optimism is how I viewed your comments there in terms of, it is different. It is different, but that's why I like it. This is, when anybody writes Batman, the constant challenge for anybody writing Batman is how in the hell do you write something new about Batman? Good grief. That would be difficult. How can you tell a Batman story that hasn't been done before? And Mark Russell, I think that, dare I suggest, I think he's actually done it here. Now, how it will resonate with fans, I don't know. But for me, I got to tell you, I like the idea that this is a Bruce Wayne. He's kind of he's sort of a rich kid. He's a rich brat. His parents are killed going to the movie Mark of Zorro, but he's not with them. So young Bruce Wayne doesn't experience the trauma of losing his parents in front of him. He doesn't experience that trauma. He experiences their loss, but not in the same manner. So the degree of trauma is less. He's got a close relationship with Alfred, but he takes advantage. But he's presumptuous, and he takes advantage of the fact that lawyers can get him out of trouble. And at one point, he even meets a young Selina Kyle, who is a juvenile delinquent, but Selina learns how to live off the streets. Young Bruce Wayne always learns, he literally is born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And Alfred does little to divest him of that notion. And even Alfred in his later years seems to be missing in this story. And we start in the future in 2030, and then it's an older Bruce Wayne looking back. An older Bruce Wayne is being counseled by a Dr. Barbara Grayson, who I'm assuming is married to Dick Grayson, and she's counseling him and suggests to an older Bruce Wayne to journal and write down his past, because this older Bruce Wayne has Alzheimer's, seems to be losing his memory. And it's in the journaling of his past and in trying to remember his past by writing it down, that the story that we the readers are privy to the memories of this older Bruce Wayne, and how he, as he's younger and as he loses his parents and grows older, there's this faceless society that is ran in the background, that is sort of running Wayne Enterprises, ran by who we know to be the Black Mask, this Zionist character, who is actually going to be the CEO of Bruce Wayne Wayne Enterprises until Bruce Wayne turns 18. But when he turns 18, Bruce Wayne ends up in jail because his lawyers abandon him. And so it's all sort of like a setup and a trap. And then that reveal that we talked about with Pariah actually being the head of the Faceless Society. Pariah is normally, he's the guy that warns about a crisis. And what's interesting here is that Pariah was involved in the Superman Space Age story, and here he is in the Dark Age story, and his plans for Wayne Enterprises, he's not looking to the future. As he says, he's only looking to 1985, which we fans of the original Crisis and DC fans, we know that 1985 was the year of the first and original Crisis on Infinite Earths. So it's interesting. What is Pariah's endgame here in this particular universe? It's unlikely that this is the exact same universe as the Superman Space Age. If it is, I don't think it quite fits, quite frankly. But it's interesting that because Pariah goes from world to world to warn people of the pending crisis of the end of all that is, and how Pariah ends. What's Pariah's endgame here in taking over Wayne Enterprises on this particular Earth? I don't know. How does this Bruce Wayne end up getting out of jail and becoming Batman? We don't know, but this is very different. This is a different Bruce Wayne. This is a different Selina Kyle. This is a different, Pariah's behavior seems to be out of sync than how we would normally associate and think of that character, and always being sort of a harbinger of crisis to come. So I don't know. I really like it. You hinted at it. There are some people that love Mike Allred's art. I won't say I love it, but I like it a lot. I've been a fan of the Allred since X-Force. It's actually, I'm not an X-Men fan, but I got their hardcover X-Force omnibus, which back in the day I got, and I loved it. And in any event, I'm really intrigued by this, and I like the fact that it's an eclectically different approach to the Batman mythology. So this is one of my recommends. I think this is good. I like this better. By the way, I like it better than the Superman Space Age already. I like it better already, just because it does feel different, like you were talking about.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think it's 100% in the same. I mean, especially based on that was called Space Age. This is Dark Age. They're both Mark Russell. I think this is exactly in that same universe. Pariah, what have you? What is it about it that makes you think it's not? Just because?
Well, Pariah wasn't in control of when Enterprise was in that Space Age story. Although we only saw that more or less from Superman's perspective. And
yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering. I think.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it could be. It was just that it was kind of a wonky fit, because Batman, it would just be I'm trying to remember how to fit this into that story. I suppose it's possible, but I know how that Space Age story ended with Superman, and if this Earth ends the same way, we already know the ending to this story then, because we know the ending to the Superman one. So it feels, I feel like this would be almost.
I get what you're saying. And the other thing, like you mentioned, there's a flash forward in this where we do see Bruce in the
past 1985 in 2030, which that throws me off.
Yeah, you're right. That would make sense. But yeah, you're right. I don't know how that would fit, because obviously Bruce has to go on the journey to become Batman eventually, because he was, I would say a recognizable Batman. A more recognizable Batman in that Space Age story when he was, fighting against the crises along with the other Justice Leaguers. I would say he's very much less recognizable as a Bruce Wayne we've seen before when he's a teenager here. So yeah, I guess, interesting. We'll see how it plays out. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to kind of compliment you on, you used the perfect word to describe this privileged Bruce Wayne: presumptuous. That was the perfect word, because that's how he comes across. He comes across as, I can do whatever the hell I want because I'm going to get away with it. And, not to defend him, but you can understand why he thinks that, because he always has. He always has gotten away. I mean, there's a plaque outside the police station dedicated to his father. Yeah. I mean, even most of the cops are 100% willing to look the other way until a young police officer named Jim Gordon shows up on the scene and doesn't, quite know how things work. And then, as Rocky mentioned, Roman Sionis, Black Mask. Yeah, he's like, here's our chance. He's close to 18. We can get him charged as an adult. Legal team doesn't show up. Things fall apart for him from there. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. That's kind of what I was saying. How I'm not recommending this yet. I'm going to give it another issue to see if I really enjoy it. Okay. Let me get to the next book we're going to talk about. Penguin number 8, written by Tom King. There's a different artist that we haven't seen on the book before. Let me get to the credits page. And I do enjoy this art better than the Subic art, which again I didn't think was terrible, but it didn't quite have the same feel when we had that art. But the artist that started the title, Rafael De La Torre, is back. Marcelo Maiello on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. This one kind of jumps around a little bit too. The Penguin it's called The Apartment. The Penguin is back in Gotham, and Batman now knows he's back. Now you want to talk about some continuity glitches here, right? Like, one of the things that was in that Subic issue, Stephen Subic illustrated issue that we had, was this idea that Batman has been allowing the Penguin to exist all along, because the Penguin has been informing on some of the other supervillains in Gotham City. Even to the point that the reason that the Penguin took on all those affectations of a penguin, the umbrella, the laugh, the cigarette holder, all of that was so he could go to Arkham Asylum instead of Blackgate. So kind of, get out, hey, he's cured, whatever, and be able to be out there on the streets to be an informant, kind of confidential informant for Batman. And this whole idea that if Batman hadn't busted him, if he hadn't thrown him in Arkham, everybody would have became suspicious. Why does everyone else get busted and the Penguin gets away with certain things? So I sort of thought, interesting. Again, there's some longtime Batman fans that may take exception to it, but interesting take. But I sort of expected that to be, okay, so that's how it was in the beginning when the Penguin first came on the scene, and that was a Batman that was early in his career as well, maybe year two. But that agreement had kind of gone by the wayside as the Penguin became more ruthless or what have you. Apparently that's not the case, because as here's the Penguin that, tried to get out of life, went to Metropolis, opened the flower shop, whatever. It's pulled back in by Agent What's-Her-Name. And, she's got it in for Batman. And all to do with Amanda Waller, as usual, being the puppet master behind the strings, behind the scenes, pulling the strings. And so Penguin comes back, Batman confronts him and basically intimates, hey, the arrangement's still on. Don't forget, you got to tell me what I need to know. Otherwise I'm going to throw your ass in jail. So apparently that arrangement has been going on all this time, according to Tom King. I don't know if I really like that. This is a much older Batman. Yeah. I don't think he really needs the help of the Penguin to be busting people. And it kind of goes to a little bit of the argument that we had, the epic disagreement we had about the
Gotham War.
Gotham War, where here Batman was arguing against it when Catwoman wanted to train people to just steal and not have violent crime where people were injured. Now he's sort of doing the same thing, right? But worse, because Penguin is worse. He is more violent. Innocent people do get hurt. So interesting. Obviously two different writers. Chip Zdarsky did Batman, Catwoman, War, whatever it was called, Gotham War, and this is Tom King. So yeah, different writers, different take. But I found that interesting. Like, oh, so this relationship has been going on a lot longer than I thought. The other thing that this reinforces, as it has throughout, is clearly there are people that fear the Penguin. There's some early scenes. He's back in Gotham. People recognize him, even though he had a little bit of plastic surgery. He goes to order a street dog, and the guy's like, "Are you going to kill me?" He's in the park, and a dog is barking and runs up to him, and the dog owner's like, "Are you going to kill me?" Like, so this guy, yeah, he's feared. Again, I still don't know that I buy it. I don't understand. To look at him, he doesn't seem like he would be that. I get it, right? He's capable of doing anything at any time to anyone. He doesn't have any sort of like filter or anything that would stop him. He's very ruthless. So I get why you would be intimidated him in that way, but like physically, I don't know. I just think you could run, at the very worst, you could run away from the guy. So I don't know. I still feel I get what DC's trying to do. We've talked about it a lot, trying to make him more formidable, a little bit more of a frightening figure. It's been sort of working. If I follow my own advice and say, hey, I got to listen, like if DC editorial's saying this, and I got to take them for, their word. But I don't know. It's just hard for me to think of him as this huge threat. So anyway, I did enjoy this issue, but it was interesting to see that relationship between him and Batman, apparently according to Tom King, has been ongoing throughout his criminal career and throughout Batman's career. So, and the Delator art, he's fantastic. Throughout this series, his art has been great. It's I would say the style's less clean than his usual style, but you kind of want that. This is sort of a crime noir story, so you want that grittiness, that visceral feel. So anyway, what were your thoughts on this one?
It reminded me a little bit of some of the plot points of John Ridley's One Bad Day when he scripted the Penguin One Bad Day, about how Penguin was, that Penguin and Batman need each other. Penguin is controlled chaos, or better the devil you know than the one you don't, in terms of the way Batman would think about it. Penguin's a bad guy, but as long as better to have a bad guy in the street that's eliminating worse guys, and he's more or less sort of under my control, even though maybe he isn't. It's just one of those uncomfortable relationships you have when you're dealing with a war on the streets and the crime of Gotham, and I got mixed feelings about it, but overall it still answers the question, and people may not like the answer, of course, that Tom King has given, but it certainly answers the question: how can a fat, dilapidated, out-of-shape guy like Oswald Cobblepot remain a king of the mobsters in Gotham City for so long? And as it ends up, he's very smart and manipulative, but also Batman has indeed given him a free pass. That possesses some degree of believability to me, even though I think we can all admit that it doesn't quite fit in with all the stories. Continuity-wise, there's all kinds of ways we can pick and rip that apart if we're going to try to fit in every Penguin story. Now, so that is, I think, a very legitimate criticism of the story. But now I want to give some compliments here. I like this. This is issue 8. This is like the return of the king. And the king being the king of the Penguins, of course. Oswald returns to Gotham. He's the returning mobster, the returning godfather. He's just compare this to issue 1, and the juxtapositions are obvious, and I think work very well. That I could immediately see the comparisons to issue 1. He approaches the hot dog vendor, recognizes him as the Penguin and is terrified. The guy walking the dog is terrified because it's the Penguin, and he's afraid that he might be killed or his dog might be killed. A hitman tries to take him out, and but is taken out by the Help, who is protecting. Oswald Cobblepot is walking around the park in Gotham City, and the Help basically has a rifle and is constantly protecting him from whoever might try to take him out. And of course, that's his Aiden and Addison, his son and daughter. Of course, they took control of the mafia when Penguin left or was taken off the playing field. So they've hired a hitman to kill him. And so there's a war. There's a generational war going on for control of Gotham. But the Penguin has returned, and one of my favorite scenes is when they send the Riddler confronts the Penguin. And what I found interesting, and this sort of builds on your point, is that the Riddler now knows. The Riddler accuses Penguin of being the spy for Batman, and the Penguin even admits it. And I'm thinking, that is a strategic misplay by Oswald Cobblepot. Why would you tell the Riddler that? And he insults Riddler's intelligence, even though he admits Riddler should have the intelligence of Lex Luthor and more intelligent. He's got the intelligence but never uses it. So Tom King is also implicitly sort of playing into Riddler one bad day, even though that really can't be in continuity, I don't think. But in any event, it's interesting. Tom King is definitely playing with his own action figures in the sandbox, so to speak. And, now that everybody knows, what is Penguin, Two-Face, all these other A-list Rogues Gallery members of Batman's Rogues Gallery, how are they going to feel when they find out that they've been, lied to by Penguin for all these years? Penguin is really sort of, how's the Joker going to feel about that? In any event, it sort of leads to something that there's a lot of future stories that maybe could come out of this. But the other thing is, at the end, when we're going back and forth in the timelines here, in one of the, Jim Gordon is investigating a massive shootout series of murders that have taken place in an apartment building. And it appears as if Aiden has been killed. Aiden Cobblepot has been killed. 3/4 of the 4th of July team has been wiped out. We don't know how. We don't know what happened. But this issue ends with Jim Gordon saying, "My God, Oswald, what did you do?" And remember how the first issue ended with Batman turning to Oswald Cobblepot in the Batmobile saying, "My God, Penguin, how did you do this?" And so we've got similarities and reflections of dialogue from the first issue to the 8th issue. The evolution of Penguin's character from the first issue, where he was sort of like the fat, dilapidated, almost harmless old old rich man, hiding out in Metropolis. Suddenly he's returned to Gotham City as like the king mobster, and I really like how that's played out. And I'm really curious to see how all these blanks are going to be filled in. Like I said, I actually enjoyed this issue, but I agree that it might be a potential misstep with your comments about Penguin always being sort of Batman's stooge. I don't know how that's going to go over with the general Batman reading public.
Yeah, I mean, it probably won't, but I mean, that's the cool thing about DC. We know ever since DC Rebirth and when things kind of went off the rails, Jeff Johns stuff started being later and later. They're just trying to have their cake and eat it too, and you just fit it in your headcanon the way you want. If you want to think of this as a Black Label story and it's not actually in continuity, you can completely do that. If you want to make it fit and don't go back and examine those previous Penguin stories too closely, because like Rocky said, if you do, it's going to kind of fall apart. Then you don't have to. So, but I think it works either way. Anyway, on to Flash number 7. There's no credits page in the issue, the press preview that we got. We know it's written by Is Spurrier. We know that Ramon Perez is doing the line art. Dodgson is listed on the cover. I don't know who that is. Dodgson. I'm gonna assume it's the color artist, but I don't know, and I don't know who did the letters. So sorry, everybody. I can only go by what they give us, and they didn't give us a lot to work with this time. So anyway, as far as the story itself, it's continuing this cosmic horror story that Is Spurrier's been telling. I talked a lot about it when we talked about his Hellblazer, Dead in America series that's going on. And when I talked about him just trying to establish kind of a feel, and how I don't really feel like the sense of emotion or overall tone of the story that he's bringing to Flash really works for Flash, works for Wally West specifically. And in general, I don't think it works that well for a superhero comic either. Now, that being said, this is a little bit of a heavy expositional issue where we have Max Mercury and Impulse being rescued from inside the time stream, a place they call Icto, which is the last half of Tick and the first part of Talk, because that's kind of where they were trying to get to Time Point. And it's all about the Speed Force and TikTok and all this stuff, and this idea again that's not original at all about the speedsters in the DC universe, people that access a Speed Force, tearing reality apart by accessing it and by using their powers and what have you. So yeah, this person that goes and rescues them, who's part of the people that, not necessarily the Rip Hunter organization, but kind of another organization that is supposed to protect time. And there's some intimations by this person that it's somebody that we might know. So again, not the Rip Hunter stuff, but more the Wave Rider stuff, the Linear Men.
Linear Men,
as they're called. But again, those ideas are a little bit related as well. I mean, at the end of the day, they're time cops, right? And this guy even says that. And so they come to find out it wasn't that this time cop was going there to rescue Impulse and Max Mercury, but rather going there to arrest them, to stop using their powers and whatever, and stop them from destroying reality, as it were. So kind of interesting, but like I said, an expositional issue, which if you've been having trouble following along, it kind of explains what's going on to some extent, so you can kind of understand. But if you go back and listen to our review of the first issue, I told everybody what was happening, and I made it very clear. And all the extra trappings and the scientific words and gobbledygook or whatever doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the story that Is Spurrier is telling is there's something wrong with the Speed Force, and Wally is maybe the one most responsible. I mean, all the rest of this is just trappings, right? It's just lipstick on the pig, if you will. to try to make this story matter. Um, the words cosmic horror kept getting thrown around a lot, both before and at the launch of this series. I'm not really seeing it. There's been a little bit of body horror here and there. I'm not a horror guy, and that's probably my least favorite genre, under the horror umbrella is body horror and, grotesque monsters and eyeballs and Cthulhu and all that crap. It just doesn't do it for me. It's not scary. I just think it looks dumb. And other than that, we haven't really gotten, I think, much horror. But again, I do think this issue, it's a little clearer because it is more expositional, kind of explaining what's going on. And there's some terms here that actually make sense, that are used, that are pretty interesting. Some concepts that are introduced by this linear man, especially when he's trying to explain what's going on to Max and Impulse after they're rescued from Icto. He says that they're an organization that's devoted to the smooth running of a stochastic universe, which just that concept is interesting, right? Like, so stochastic means unpredictable and sort of chaotic, like you can't predict the future. So just think about what a paradox it is, right? Like, there's this organization, the Linear Men, who's dedicated to the smooth running, so everything happens as it's supposed to. That's how you kind of take it. Everything's predictable, everything's smooth, no bumps in the road. Things happen as you expect them to happen. In a universe that's unpredictable, right? Like, that's such a paradoxical statement, which I think sort of gets to the whole point of why this story is sort of dense and hard to understand, because it's sort of an inherently paradoxical story if you start adding in all the details of it. When you strip all that away, it's what I said. There's something wrong with the Speed Force, which is, again, a story that's been told in terms of the Flash characters, the speedsters of the DC universe. From the very beginning, from the first time Mark Waid introduced the concept of the Speed Force, writers have been telling stories of there's something wrong with the Speed Force. So, this isn't original. I've yet to find some sort of touch point in the story where it clicks for me and I go, yeah, okay, now I get what Spurrier is trying to do. Now I understand it. Now I can relate to it. It just hasn't happened. And I feel like I know who Wally West is as a character pretty well by now. I've been reading the guy, even before, definitely ever since 1987, when his own, series came over. He took over for Barry Allen, that iconic cover where he's racing the jets, yellow background. But even before that, when he was Kid Flash. So yeah, I feel like I have a pretty good idea of who the character is, but I'm not getting that sense here. So it's a little frustrating, not necessarily because I don't understand the story, although there is some of that. But I've just sort of stopped trying to figure out the scientific gobbledygook that Spurrier's here. I figure it'll be explained at some point. But just frustration that, again, compared to his Hellblazer series, where I can really see what he's trying to do and really kind of understand it, and really enjoyed the last issue of that. Really clicked for me. I was enjoying it before then, but it really, it sort of, I don't know. It just, the last issue was so impactful, and I really felt like I had a great understanding of the point he's trying to get across and what he's trying to accomplish with the series. And I just don't have that here. And it's frustrating. Like, I feel like I'm missing something, and maybe I'm not, maybe I'm giving the guy too much credit. Or maybe it is my failing that I'm just not understanding what he's getting at. Or maybe we just haven't gotten to the point yet, but, this is issue 7, first issue of the second arc. And I feel like we should have gotten to the point by now. And, again, it also goes back to just how much I was enjoying The Flash when Jeremy Adams was writing it. And I'm not enjoying this. It feels like homework. When I read this, it feels like I'm doing my homework. You know what I mean? Like, something that I have to do, not necessarily for the enjoyment of it. But I will admit that this issue was, one of the better ones of the series. Maybe it's because I'm being spoon-fed information by this linear man. I didn't care, I wouldn't go so far as say I've been complaining about the Diodato art, the regular artist on the series, but I've just been saying he's using a very complicated style, and you have a complicated story, and they don't always complement each other. Here we have Ramon K. Perez, who I really liked his art on Stillwater that he did with Chip Zdarsky. I don't know that his style, it really lends itself to speedsters. It doesn't really feel very kinetic, but it is a cleaner style, less complicated style than Diodato's using. But I still didn't think it worked for the story that well. So anyway, I don't know. I feel bad, like I'm always dumping on the Flash as a series, but it just hasn't been working for me. So I can't, in good conscience, be like, "Hey, it's great." It's not for me right now.
Yeah.
And if anybody's like a superhero and a Flash guy, it's me, right? Like sometimes we say, "Oh yeah, things aren't working for us," but maybe that's okay because we're not the target audience for Harley Quinn or for young Wonder Woman or what have you. But I feel like I am the target audience for Flash, and it's still not working. I think that's a little bit of a problem. So
Yeah. I echo your sentiments. I will say that I reread for a third time Hellblazer, Hell on Earth last week, and as I did last week, you explained it to me, and when I reread it with your explanation, I enjoyed it immensely more. But it all made sense to me, and it flowed so much better when I just knew certain things that weren't obvious to me when I read it the first two times, and so that's good. I mean, it did eventually sink in, but it. I've read this Flash issue 3 times already. So I'm only going to make myself sound like more of really, I feel there's nothing more frustrating when I read a comic and I feel dumb. And I got to admit, I feel a little dumb here. I'm still not entirely sure what an arc-angle is, or the uncoiled, or a shaper. But at the same time, yeah, you're right. Something's wrong with the Speed Force. What's happened is that we know that the Crown of Thrawns, we know that Thrawn, who is Reverse Flash, probably is one of the Crown of Thrawns is what's causing the disruption in the Speed Force. We know that he poisoned or manipulated Barry Allen's mind, and in this issue might likely be the one that is causing Linda to act very strangely. Barry Allen confronts Linda. Barry Allen can't remember a lot because his mind was manipulated by the Crown of Thrawns. Linda talks about hearing pipes, and so Barry thinks it's the Pied Piper. It's revealed here that the Pied Piper is working for Mr. Terrific, but he's not. He's actually, Mr. Terrific says Pied Piper is fine. He's not doing anything bad. He's actually reforming himself, being a member on Mr. Terrific's science, working on in his science lab. Meanwhile, the Linear Men, by Inspector Pilgrim, what they've done is that they have essentially captured or gathered together all of the speedsters, the speed conduits in the universe, and they've got them sort of in stasis. And I guess they've arrested them. And Inspector Pilgrim has the idea that, and his intentions are noble. He doesn't want to kill Impulse. He doesn't want to kill Max Mercury. He just says, look, I've gone out of my way. He says that if it was up to the Uncoiled, we would have killed you, he says, but we want to try to find a way to avoid having to kill you speedsters, but we need you to stop running around because you're causing disruptions in the Speed Force. So I'm actually siding with Inspector Pilgrim on this. Inspector Pilgrim also hints under his breath that Gold Beetle is kind of family, he says. So he's related to Gold Beetle. So who is Inspector Pilgrim? Well, apparently he's related to the Gold Beetle. Well, Gold Beetle is the girlfriend of a future Jay Irie. When Jay Irie gets older, Gold Beetle is his girlfriend. So who is Inspector Pilgrim? Could Inspector Pilgrim be an older Jay Irie? Could Inspector Pilgrim be the son of Jay Irie and Gold Beetle? I don't know. I'm just speculating. Who knows? But so when I talk about it that way, when I speak in generalities, it's really weird with Is Spurrier. When I read this, it's the oddest thing. It's like I'm reading all these high concept words and all this exposition, and it's almost like I can read it's almost like I can look at a long mathematical formula, but if I know the answer is 7, I can either give you the long formula or I can just say the number 7. That's like when I read this, it's like, okay, so something's wrong with the Speed Force. What's wrong? Why do we need all this noise? Do you know what I mean? To me, it's like the difference between noise and music. Just if it's, I don't know if I need all the bells and whistles to this. I hate to say this, but this does come across, and I know Is Spurrier doesn't intend it this way, and I know he's clearly a very intelligent person, and I think he probably clearly knows more about real world quantum mechanics than I ever will, because he's playing with some concepts here that I used to be familiar with at some point in my life. But it does come across as a little bit pretentious in the writing, because even Wally seems to know what's going on. Wally's not a quantum mechanic guy. Even so many of the players and characters in this story seem to know even Impulse seems to kind of know what's going on with all, but none of us readers do. And I just feel at some point I can't believe there isn't a character that at some points just interrupts everybody and says, what's going on? I made the same complaint in the Speed Force miniseries we talk about. At some point, like you said, we're 7 issues in. At some point, when none of the characters seems to know what's going on, but all of them collectively do know what's going on, but you're forcing them to not communicate with each other for reasons that don't quite make sense and are inconsistent with their past characterizations, it just doesn't really work. And so that's why it doesn't really work for me. But I will admit that there's definitely some interesting plot points here, but I think people are going to miss them. I mean, how many people are going to read this and are going to catch that Inspector Pilgrim says that he's actually related to Gold Beetle? I bet you a lot of people might have missed that line because it's in very small font. But by the time you're done reading this, you're so bombarded with all this other exposition, you miss. I fear many readers might miss the more interesting plot points that are addressed. But maybe I'm wrong on that. But this was a miss for me. But I will admit that some of these plot points do have potential. We'll have to see how it turns out.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. There is a little bit of a neener. I know what's going on. You don't sort of feel at times to this story. So yeah. I haven't checked in a while. I had been, I think I guess it's only been a month. After issue 1, after issue 2, all the way issue 1 through issue 6, I've gone to Comic Book Roundup and looked at the reviews for this because I'm like, maybe it's just me. And they have been steadily dropping, both from the reader submitted reviews as well as the critical reviews. I haven't gone and checked after issue 7 yet. Or maybe I haven't checked after 6 because I think I've checked 1 through 5. I didn't check after 6 because I went and I looked after we reviewed it, which is before it actually was released. So I need to go check on 6 and then maybe 7 later this week to see. Yeah, maybe we're missing something, Rocky. But I kind of don't, based on the track record of 1 through 5 and how their ratings have been trending down, I don't think we have. Anyway, let's move on. Maybe from bad to worse or from worse to bad. I'm not exactly sure. Anyway, it's Amazon's Attack, number 6. It's the finale, the Shadow Blade. Josie Campbell is the writer. Vasco Gregev handles the art. Alex Guermas on colors. Becca Carey on letters. I'm going to let you go first. Because I think you're going to say a lot of what I would say anyway. And I can ditto and we can move on. So anyway, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm not going to be as I'm not going to be as vitriolic as what you might expect. I actually think that Josie Campbell was handed a box of lemons and made lemonade, and I really do think that because Tom King doesn't play well with others. He really doesn't. He's not a team player. He does his own thing, and I don't think he inspires a team. He might be able to inspire himself, and you and I love some Tom King stories. There's no question about that. But he's not like a Mark Waid or Jeff Johns that inspires other writers to, who say to him, "Oh, can I contribute to that story? It's so cool."
I love Tom, and if you heard, I asked him about that at the end of the interview, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't want anyone to tell me what to write, and I don't want to tell anyone else to write." So yeah, he's not, he doesn't collaborate in that way. Like, you go write your story and I'll write my story. Yeah. That's just how he is. It's how he likes to work. So
yeah, no. And that's fair. And we take that as readers, we have to accept that. And we do with that as we will. And so be it. Now, having said that, Josie Campbell here, it's very clear that these apples of discord, these apples of discord by this asylum god. There's this brand new goddess, Asylum, who intentionally used the chaos caused by that Amazon terrorist attack that Tom King's writing about. This asylum goddess used the apples of discord to ferment further discord and use that as a pretense to make things more difficult for the Amazons and set up Queen Nubia at the White House, put all those things in motion, all with the goal of essentially sabotaging Nubia's plans to get along with man's world, because Nubia wants to unite, or at least Asylum assumes that Nubia wants to unite Themyscira with the rest of the world. That's not what I think Queen Nubia actually wants to do. I don't know if Josie Campbell, this story seems to suggest that Nubia wants to sort of unite the Amazons with the rest of the world. I think she wants to maybe improve relations. And anyways, this asylum goddess is against that. And Josie Campbell, I'll give her some further credit here. While I think she's rewriting Wonder Woman history a little bit, the origins of this asylum goddess is that she used to be an Amazon that actually betrayed the Amazons by letting Heracles into the gates of old Themyscira and let Heracles in, and that's when Heracles and his men raped and pillaged the Amazons, fermenting the hatred that the Amazons had toward men. And she feels that this asylum goddess still to this day feels that the Amazons made a mistake. The Amazons should have been compliant and just did what we men, we're really nice men. Women should just do what men ask to get along with us men, and just bow to us, do what we say, and that's what this asylum goddess, she feels very strongly about this. It's another. The story's wonky to me, and anyways, she gets Asylum gets defeated, and rather, I think there's some really cool visuals. There's an alternate cover that is probably 1 in 25. It looks fantastic. It's Asylum holding her two swords with the skull on her face, and she looks really cool. But ultimately, she's defeated. I got to admit, I wasn't a fan of the choreography. Josie Campbell, how Mary Marvel defeated the apples of discord are all over the world, and she uses Hoppy, the rabbit, to transport all over the world. And I guess I don't know what she was. I don't know what happened. I think she acquired all these apples of discord by teleporting all over the world to get them, and then defeating the queen, or the Mrs. Savannah, the Savannah character, who's Josie Campbell in her Mary Marvel series. She wrote that Mary Marvel series where the Savannah character, the female Savannah character, was the villain. So she's defeated. And at the end here, I thought the ending really never made much sense. The Queen Nubia actually takes Asylum and handcuffs Asylum and then drops Asylum off in front of Sergeant Steele and tells Sergeant Steele that, oh, we're not responsible for what happened at the White House. This random person you've never seen before with a skull face, this is the real person, the bad guy. She doesn't present any evidence. She doesn't present anything. I completely didn't believe it. It didn't make any sense. The ending to me, I thought it was very convenient, very wrapped up. There's no way that, given the environment and the international vitriol against the Amazons that Tom King has set up in Wonder Woman, there's no way this ending would fly. There's no way Queen Nubia would have been picked up. She would have been. They got the world against them. So I didn't buy the ending. It was too convenient. It was just too convenient. And also, straight up, while I like the rapport between the Amazons, I liked the fact that Yara Flora, Wonder Girl, and Nubia and Queen Faruka, the former Queen Faruka, they all got together. I personally would have liked to have seen more dissension, more flaws, more. I would have liked to have seen former Queen Faruka actually be a betrayer, not mind controlled, not taken over. I think Faruka really should be she'd be a better queen. I think there should be more conflict between these characters, but DC doesn't want to go that way because I think DC is scared shitless in portraying any Amazon as even remotely flawed in any way, shape, or form. And we're going to get into that when we get into Brave and the Bold and reviewed part 2 of a really bad Artemis story. But we'll get to that later. But again, I thought that Josie Campbell, she put, you used the phrase earlier, lipstick on the pig. That's what this was. This was a story that shouldn't have existed, but it needed to exist because Tom King, when he wrote his story, he's too slow a writer. Tom King just wants to write a Wonder Woman story, and he wants the whole world involved on it, but he doesn't want the Justice League involved. He really doesn't want the world involved. Tom King just wants Wonder Woman and the Sovereign fighting each other. That's it. He doesn't want to imagine. He wants to take all the Amazons off the field. He doesn't want to deal with them. He wants to take the army off the field. He doesn't want to deal with them. He wants it to be Wonder Woman versus the Sovereign and dealing with cancer patients, young cancer patients, and of course we got to make sure we get Batman a birthday present. I get it, but Josie Campbell at least addressed what was actually going on with the rest of the world. That the rest of the world, we got these apples of discord. I mean, at least she did something. She had to do something. But unfortunately, clearly, Josie Campbell was not allowed to truly link this to have some consequence to Tom King's story. That's on Tom King. I'll put it on him. Or at least some editorials should put their foot down and say, hey, come on, man. I mean, why couldn't the Sovereign be the enemy here? Why couldn't there be any of the rogues gallery that Wonder Woman has to face in issue 5 of Wonder Woman? Why weren't they here instead of this Savannah character? Come on. I mean, I know Josie Campbell had that villain, but it just seems to me unfair. You're hamstringing Josie Campbell. She's a good up-and-coming writer. She was the best writer of Trial of the Amazons, which was a series that we generally didn't like, but I'll give her props. She was the best writer out of a whole crop of them that weren't particularly good, but she's the best of what they were dealing with, and I just think she was hamstrung here, and I want to give her credit that she did the best she could with what she was given, and yeah, and I'll just leave it at that. But this story is what it is, but it could have been so much better. And I refuse to put the blame solely on Josie Campbell on that front. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. I mean, I don't necessarily agree that that she had to write it and this had to exist. I mean, the problem is that DC has tried to raise Wonder Woman's profile, in recent years, and so you're kind of stuck, right? Like they got to find a way to make this work, because we did have Trial of the Amazons, we did have Nubia come back, we did have Yara Flor and what have you, and so if you're going to do all that, you're going to put out all that effort, then yeah, I guess you got to write stories about them. But I got to be honest, I don't think very many of those stories, Trial of the Amazons, the Nubia miniseries, or what have you that we had, I don't think many of them worked very well. I don't think they were very good. And so I think it would have been okay to just have Tom telling his story in the pages of Wonder Woman and just leave the others just off to the side for a while. Okay. I'm not sure, but I think that DC probably knew, well, if Tom's doing a Wonder Woman story, it's going to sell really well. And so we can sort of capitalize on it, take advantage of that, and put out a mini series simultaneously called Amazon's Attack. And I won't go so far as to say it's a bait and switch, but make people think that, okay, if you're reading Tom's Wonder Woman, you should be picking up this Amazon's Attack as well. When, to your point, one doesn't really have anything to do with the other. So yeah, it's not even really needed in those terms. So yeah, I mean, this isn't a bad story, but the problem is it's building on what has come before with Nubia and with Queen Faruka and with the Bonda McDowell and Yara Flor and what have you. That, that's the foundation. The things that happened in Trial of the Amazon, that's the foundation. That's things that you don't necessarily have to have read in order to read this, but it provides more context for this story. But the fact of the matter is that none of that stuff, none of the foundational stuff is high quality. Then what are you going to end up with here? You're going to end up with something that's, like I said, lipstick on a pig. Again, it's not terrible, but throughout this story, it sort of felt like, okay, we're going from point A to point B to point C, and we're checking off, we're going down this checklist. This needs to happen, and then this needs to happen, and this issue, this villain needs to be revealed. Apples of Discord need to be explained. Here we have this new god that you mentioned, Asylum, which just a very strange character. Wait, a female character that's used to be an Amazon that's saying to the Amazons, you need to listen to men. Like, she's so antithetical to what the Amazons stand for, right? I was like, what the fuck is this? What's going on? But throughout the series, it really felt like Josie Campbell was going down this checklist. Let me check this off. This needs to happen. Check, check, check. Yeah. And that didn't leave much room for any characterization. Like, I could have excused a lot of what happened here is, well, that's not particularly good, or that's not particularly entertaining, or it feels like a very by the numbers story. I can excuse a lot of that stuff if there's like really good characterization. We do it for Tom Taylor all the time, right? Like, his books tend to take a while, and they tend to be decompressed storytelling, and sometimes the pacing can be wonky, and sometimes it jumps around, and plot lines are set aside for 2-3 months at a time. But we sort of forgive him on a lot of it because he'll give us some great character moments, right? Like, there's great character growth or great character moments or moments between two characters or something along those lines. And so we're a little more forgiving. We didn't get any of that here, unless you want to count some humorous moments with Hoppy the Bunny, which I could be charitable, but I can't be that charitable. Like, we didn't, I think about like some of the failure. Like, remember how excited people are about Yara Flor? And I think, wasn't there even at one point rumors of possibly a television show being in development or what happened? Like, people were so excited about Yara Flor and blah, blah. And, DC kind of fumbled that. And part of it was Joelle Jones, her art, and she couldn't stay on schedule and what have you. But like, there's been no development, like no character development. She's been, if anything, made more unlikable than when she first showed up. So it's like, at some point you gotta do something different. You gotta give us some character development and grow these characters. I mean, same thing with Nubia, right? The argument could be made that Nubia, to some extent, is still, the same original character she was when she first showed up years ago. She hasn't grown. She hasn't done a particularly good job as queen of the Amazons. Can't point to anything she's done and said, well, she's a very good queen. She's very capable, no, like, if anything, you compare to Hippolyta, and it's like, man, she's kind of been a failure as the queen. All these horrible things have happened to the Amazons since she took over. You can blame her or not. Like, I don't think it's all 100% her fault, but there's no characterization. There's no growth in any of these characters. There's nothing to get excited about this series. This will be dollar bin fodder forever, basically, unless somehow, I don't know, Taylor Swift is cast as Asylum in a movie, and people go rushing out to get issue 4 of Amazon Attacks because it's the first appearance of her or whatever. That's the only way I could ever see this book being worth anything.
Because Taylor Swift, at least to Taylor Swift's credit, she loves men. She loves football players too. So I mean, she's the perfectly cast for Asylum.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I don't, I don't mean to be facetious or whatever and poke fun,
I do.
But it's just not very good. That's just the bottom line. It's just not a very good series. But again, all credit to Josie Campbell for doing like you said, you put it perfectly. She was handed a box of lemons. She made lemonade. I don't know what else you could have done with kind of the state of the Amazons where they're at right now. So I'm glad it's over. Anyway, let's move on. We've got Green Arrow number 10, Riders on the Storm, which, fantastic title there. Writer Joshua Williamson, art by Sean Isaacs and Tom Darnett, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Troy Petrie. Give us your thoughts on this one, Rocky.
I don't really have a lot to say about this. This is just a lot of exposition heavy stuff. I haven't been all This is one of Joshua Williamson's titles for DC that he's writing that I'm not really a big fan of. I'm the least interested in this. I'm much more interested in what he's got going over with Superman. I thought I'm really enjoying what he's doing over in the pages of Superman. But this is Green Arrow. Right since issue 1, I thought the first story arc I didn't think it was very good. I thought it was just disconnected adventures, all to eventually bring Oliver Queen back. And then Merlin was the bad guy. Didn't make any sense. Still doesn't make any sense. Now Amanda Waller is sending him to Sanctuary to find the secrets of Sanctuary because that's where Roy Harper is. And all this is some very, I think it's such a transparent attempt, which he says that's exactly what it is. This is an attempt to create a Green Arrow family. Surprise, surprise, this is a Green Arrow family. You can count the number of hugs in every issue. I mean, in this issue, Oliver Queen hugs Mia, and then he hugs Roy Harper. And of course, Oliver Queen, to me, I'm sorry, but this guy doesn't know what family is. He's a terrible father. He's a dick. He's a jerk. I mean, he's just, I've never been a fan of him. And I'm pissing off people that love Oliver Queen, and I know that the people that are out there, but there's a scene here where Oliver Queen is literally he's in the Arctic somewhere because apparently that's where the Sanctuary database is. and then Arrowette, Red Arrow, and Red Canary show up. I got to tell you, I would have flunked the test if you'd have told me, okay, what's the difference between Arrowette and Red Arrow? Okay, I wouldn't have a clue. To me, they're redundant characters. They look the same. They are the same, but they're not. One had AIDS, I think, back in the day. One does. I'm not a fan of the Green Arrow family, and they don't even have that close a relationship to begin with, really, in my mind. And then Red Canary, even Oliver Queen, when he talks about Red Canary, he says, "Oh, Dinah told me about her." I mean, all these things, all these characters just don't really. It just really feels forced to me, and they all have a bow and arrow. And I know it's their thing, but I'm sorry. I'm going off on a little bit on a tangent here. Not much happens. I mean, they literally just meet. They meet in the Arctic and they hug and they hold hands and sing Kumbaya and they all think they all got brains in their heads because Amanda Waller managed to blackmail all of them. How Amanda Waller blackmailed all the other women is not explained, and then Oliver says, "Well, you don't really have brain bombs in your head. They're teleportation devices that instead of killing you, she'll just teleport you somewhere else." Okay, so what? So then Roy and Oliver are in this sanctuary cave. Where just to back up a little bit, in the sanctuary they use hard light constructs to give you real life therapy, so that you'll have a hologram appear of a psychologist, or a hologram of yourself, or a hologram of your past, or a hologram of whatever trauma you experienced, because Tom King had the idea in Heroes in Crisis that the best way to get heroes to deal with trauma is to constantly replay the trauma to the hero that's going to treat them. Little bit of an exaggeration, but not much if you read Heroes in Crisis. And but in any event, they're attacked by the Justice League. We know it's not real. We know they're just constructs. We know nothing's at stake here. Amanda Waller once again is playing all of them like they're fools, and they are fools. I really do think all of them come across like fools. I can forgive Oliver Queen for being a fool because he thinks that Amanda Waller pulled one up on him. At least Oliver Queen at one point here says that he's instead of leaving Sanctuary, he actually wants to steal the secrets of Sanctuary and give them to Amanda Waller because he's playing the long con. And okay, everything I predicted. I hate when I'm right when I make a prediction, because when I make a prediction, I usually make a prediction out of frustration, meaning that I hope it doesn't happen. What I think will happen, because it will suck. I've been right on everything I predicted on this series from issue 1, that it would be superfluous, that nothing would happen, that it would not, and I've been right And here we are at issue 10. Nothing's happening. We will get to issue 12. Nothing will have happened. We'll be into absolute power. Surprise, surprise. Amanda Waller's manipulating everybody again. And all the heroes and all these former Suicide Squad members and the heroes, they don't have bombs in their head. They have teleportation devices. And all the heroes are going to be teleported somewhere where they're going to be robbed of their powers, going into absolute power. Those of us who've been reading the solicits and everything else and just reading between the lines know this. And what's frustrating, and this is part of the DC editorial problem, is that we don't get any surprises along the way. We get decompression. We get these stories that are decompressed ad nauseum. And it's not bad if we get some character moments. There are character moments here, I guess. If you're an Oliver Queen fan, I don't want to take away from Joshua Williamson. There are some moments, I suppose, between these characters, but I guess it's because I don't really feel that it's in service of the plots that I'm most interested in. I'm more interested in Leon, Roy Harper, Leon, and Jade. I'm interested in that relationship. And that can be done outside the context of Oliver Queen. I think Oliver Queen takes away from all these characters, straight up. I don't want a Green Arrow family. I think Green Arrow is best as what he's always been, screwed up and dysfunctional and screwing around on a gorgeous blonde named Black Canary. I don't think they should deviate from that. I've and a little bit of a rant here. I've ranted before about there's not enough villains, pure hate, pure evil villains. We need more villains, genuine villains. Enough with the anti-hero bullshit. We need genuine villains, and we need heroes that are genuinely flawed and unapologetically so. But we don't get that anymore because everyone's so afraid of offending a fan of this character, a fan of that. But I don't know. My rant is over, my friend. What do you think?
I mean, I thought it was okay. I mean, you're right in that this book, like, originally announced as an ongoing, and then maybe it wasn't going to be an ongoing. They're going to end after 6 issues. Then, they're going to make it an ongoing again. And I think the only reason they did that is, okay, Joshua Williamson, take this book and just make it the prelude to absolute power. That's all this is. That's all this is. Like you said, it's Williamson taking the opportunity to have a book where Amanda Waller is, very much a big part of it, very much a main character, and, use this book to put everybody in place for whatever machinations need to happen for absolute power to take place. That's all this is. That's literally all it is. And I agree with you to some extent. I don't agree. Like, I like Oliver Queen as a character. I think there's room for him and a place for him in the DCU. But I do agree with you that he Green Arrow family, no. Oliver is very much a flawed individual. As you said, he's made mistakes as a father, both with Roy Harper and Connor Hawke. He's not Wally West, and he shouldn't be. And don't try to make him into Wally or Barry. Those are more family-centric characters. Sure. Ollie is not that. He's better off just, working alone or working alongside Black Canary, as you said. And it's not to say I don't like some of these other characters. But you're right, again, in saying that they're sort of redundant. Red Canary, very redundant. We don't even know that much about her. And every time she comes up, we're told that. We're reminded that we don't know that much. Nobody else knows that much about her either. And yeah, Red Arrow and Arrowette, it's basically the same character. So yeah, I did appreciate that Williamson's calling back to, Sanctuary. You're right. Your little aside there, like, why is the data from Sanctuary stored in the Arctic? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Maybe we'll get some cool action. I think the art's pretty solid. I love the final splash page there that you had up, where it's like the classic Justice League satellite era, I guess people would refer to it as. Although there's no Firestorm or Elongated Man, but yeah, I mean, maybe we'll get some cool fights. It is great to see Roy and Ollie back together. It's been a while since they've been on the page together, because I do like that relationship, even though it's been antagonistic at times. So yeah, we'll see how they do fighting side by side with each other. I want to mention something you said earlier, that Amazon's Attack cover you really liked about being a 1 in 25. There are no incentive covers for Amazon Attack. So that was open to order.
Oh,
that vast Greg cover. So if
oh,
you want
great.
it,
I'll pick it up then. Because yeah, right on.
yeah. So, all right, moving on. Next up, we have Batman Brave and the Bold. 5 stories here. We'll try to fly through them. Batman Mother's Day Part 2. Carl Kerschel, writer and artist. Norm Ratman handles inks on some of the pages. M. Sasiak on colors. Steve Wands on letters. Then we have The Sweet Science by Christos Gage as writer. Danny Kim is the artist. Diego Rodriguez on colors. Pat Brosso on letters. Artemis, The Poison Within, Part 2. Delilah S. Dawson. I think Rocky's going to have some thoughts on that one. She's the writer. Serge Acuna is the artist. Matt Herms on colors. Dave Sharp on letters. Private Stein from Michael W. Conrad as writer. PJ Holden as artist. Mike Spicer on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. And finally, The Crown of 12 Tales. Zach Thompson, writer. Ashley Wood, artist. Hassan Otsman El Hal, letters. Oh my God, is that a weird one? So yeah, the first one, probably my favorite thing about it is the fact that we're getting more Maps Maguchi as Robin to Bruce Wayne's Batman. Man-Bat apparently is the bad guy here, except not really Man-Bat, but a Man-Bat sort of stand-in. This kid from the Gotham Academy that's also afflicted with the same sort of condition that Man-Bat has. But there's something else going on as well with vampires, which is sort of mixed in with the whole Man-Bat stuff. And we see Bruce almost fall victim to that. He's injected with something, but he does manage to escape, and he goes to Kirk Langstrom, who tries to give him a cure, but before he can, Bruce lashes out. It looks like Bruce may be a vampire, and it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger with him going to see this woman that he had at the beginning of the story, that she's a teacher at Gotham Academy, and there seems to be some sparks flying there. So we'll see how that all plays out. Pretty interesting. I mean, if you're a fan of Gotham Academy and you like Maps Maguchi, this will probably be an interesting story. Carl Kerschel is a very good storyteller, and his art is top notch as well. So I have been enjoying that. The second story is a Batlash story. If you don't know who Batlash is, Western character from DC way back in the day.
Let me, if I may, let me just comment when you're.
Okay, good. Yep.
Let me do a comment after you're done talking about each story. That way, it's just easier that way for me. So, on the Carl Kerschel story with Maps, I love it because it especially if you're fans of Birds of Prey and you want to know what Maps was like when she was younger. She was basically a wannabe Robin, and frankly, Batman. What I like what Carl Kerschel does in the story called Mother's Day is that Batman actually likes Maps too. He actually likes her as a Robin. He's reluctant to admit it, but she's actually pretty damn good as Robin. She actually helps find this other kid, Tristan. she actually helps. She's actually a pretty good detective in her own right, considering that she's just a kid with nothing more than a desire to help Batman and sort of be a hero. But she seems to earn it, but she also makes mistakes. I like this vampire idea, a mixture of sort of like the vampirism with the Man-Bat formula, and how it has a unique effect on Bruce Wayne at the end, because Bruce Wayne has Carl Kerschel has him dating this one of the teachers at Gotham Academy, this Isla character, and they end up I think he actually likes her. He's romantically attracted to her, and she to him. But there's just well-rounded. There's a lot of character development here, and this really does feel, even if you're not a fan of Gotham Academy, this is just a plain good story in and of itself. And I'm looking forward to see how this wraps up. But yeah, so good story.
Yeah. She's a great Robin, but she's great at like the intellectual, like you said, she's a great detective. She's got like little physical skills, and she's very small. Not to say she couldn't be trained to be a formidable fighter, but right now she doesn't have that skill set. So that's kind of the one thing that holds her back, if you will. Anyway, like I said, second story is a Batlash story. He's a classic DC Western character from late Golden Age, early Silver Age. And this is a very classic feeling Batlash story. So great job by Christos Gage. I would venture to guess that this story exists in Batman Brave and the Bold in this particular issue for no other reason that it was time for DC to use the character so they didn't lose the copyright. Because
That's a good guess.
no Batlash stories upcoming. There's not like there's a TV show. It's not like anybody's clamoring for the character.
Yeah.
So if you want to know a little who Batlash is, I think Chris O'Shea does a good job of kind of encapsulating who the character is in the story. He's a gambler. He's a gunfighter. He dresses kind of flamboyantly, and people underestimate him because he doesn't look. He wears like a bright yellow polka dot vest and flower in his cowboy hat and things like that. But he's a very formidable fighter and a very good with a gun as well. So
Yeah,
he's a
it's
fun
funny.
character, and he's a little bit underused. He does have his fans that would like to see more of it. So
Yeah, I noticed that the girl that he was with, her name was Josephine Harkness, and in my mind, so I Googled Harkness, and Captain Boomerang's name is George
yeah,
Digger Harkness, and I'm wondering, is that an ancestor of of Captain Boomerang? I don't know, but I
I don't,
doubt it.
yeah, I don't think there's any connection there, but who knows? I should also say the art. I really enjoyed the art and the colors,
Yeah,
the visuals.
Danny Kim. Yeah,
Yeah, the visuals in the story were very good as well. So
yeah. No, that was very good. I agree.
yeah, so if you're one of those people I was mentioning, who's a Batlash fan and you never get any Batlash, make sure you pick this up. So yeah, Danny Kim on the line work, Diego Rodriguez on the colors, both did a fantastic job. All right, I guess I should let you go first on this Artemis story. We saw last time at the end of the story, she'd been bitten by a snake, and she's I've been poisoned, and her horse, which is she's hallucinating, her horse is talking to her, saying it wasn't poison, it's venom. She's like, what? Well, yeah, poison's something you eat, venom's something if you get bit. Very pedantic, but I did enjoy. I enjoyed that. So anyway, give us your thoughts on this. Tell us why it's
Well,
bad.
I would. I wish, if you'd have told me there's no excuse for this story to exist. I mean, they don't need to protect the trademark on Artemis. She's had stories written from her in the last 2 years about her. Again, I ranted the last. I ranted the last issue of Brave and the Bold here. What it was, I think it was 10-ish. Was it 10 pages? 8 or 10 or 12 pages of Artemis just wandering in the desert, feeling guilty about herself. She continues to feel guilty about the fact that Artemis can't believe that people thought that she was a murderer, and they were so quick to think that she was a killer, and she feels so bad about it, so bad that her horse decides to talk with her, a talking horse, and then while the horse is talking with her, it turns into a half fish, and then it turns into a serpent. And basically, the message to Artemis is, Artemis, you got to learn to be at peace with yourself and the world. Yeah, it seems to miss the point that the reason why people thought Artemis was a killer was because at the time there was actually evidence against Artemis, and in fact that was the whole plot point. She agreed to do that when she had that agreement with Hippolyta. But let's forget about all that in order to try to create and force some character development that is inconsistent with the history of the character. But anyway, this is absolutely pointless to me. This is not. Artemis is the last person that's going to feel guilty about what another Amazon feels about her, in my opinion, if you know anything about the history of Artemis. This is one, she hangs out with Red Hood for a reason. She's attracted to Red Hood for a reason. They're kind of similar mindsets. When she replaced Wonder Woman, she was the more aggressive Wonder Woman. I mean, this is a woman that, I mean, short of making the character cry here, I don't see what purpose this served at all. I thought this was just a waste of time. And again, wandering through the desert, like literally, there was no interaction. There was no adventure. She's having a hallucination with her horse. This is just. I get it that you have to have some mythological. They need to tie this thing mythologically or what have you. But I mean, it's just wrong on multiple levels here. I don't know why this story needed to exist. I actually think that. I hope this isn't reprinted ever anywhere. If there's ever an iteration of Artemis that comes out at any point in the future, if this is the template that's going to be used, God help us. The best one was when she was in Red Hood and the Outlaws, in my opinion, because at least then she had characterization. She had an earned relationship with Jason Todd and even Bizarro, for God's sake. I learned more about Artemis in her relationship with Bizarro than I ever did with her at the end of the Amazons throughout the entire trial of the Amazons. And that's just a fact. But in any event, this to me is just, this is, oh, well, let's have a, what's that? We have a writer that's got nothing to do. Oh, we got a character that we got nothing to say about. Oh, let's give her 10 pages in Batman Brave and the Bold. Come on. Yeah. Anyways, just for what it's worth, I've ranted about this story. I'll be raving about a story written by Michael W. Conrad that's coming up. But before we get there, what did you think of this story?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to disagree with you. You know, I won't go so far as to say the story shouldn't exist, but the problem with the story, is that, yeah, it's presenting an Artemis, like you said, that's so wildly out of character. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, Artemis, you know, she's always come across as you said, the more aggressive Amazon, and you know, a lot to be said for that. And yeah, to me, in my mind, Artemis is going to be a character that goes, oh, you think I killed Hippolyta, and it turns out that I didn't, and I was just following orders. Yeah. What did you think? If you thought I actually killed her, you're a fucking idiot. You know, that's how she would present herself to the other Amazons, right? Now,
Yeah.
if in her own mind, or there's some part of her that was actually hurt, you know, and said, well, I wish that they wouldn't have ever like, they're idiots that they ever doubted and thought that I would have killed Artemis in cold blood, or you know, betrayed the Amazons. Like, if any Amazon could believe that, they're a moron, and they should have never thought that. But it does kind of hurt me, you know, it does hurt my feelings a little bit, or, you know, it does bother me that they would have ever thought that, right? Like, I could see her having that internal feeling, but she would never show that on the outside. So, you know, maybe I'm trying to make excuses for the story. She is out here all alone. And so maybe she could, you know, allow herself to feel that a little bit. But I think even if she's out there alone in the desert, she might think that, and might make her a little sad. She's not going to be like wallowing in it. She's not going to be like, oh, you know, my God, my life is so terrible, and I can't believe anybody believed I would kill her. Like, it's dialed up to like an 11. And I think it is possible, if you want to add that aspect of her personality, that she would have been hurt by this. I think that's okay. But I also think that she's the kind of character that, even if she thought that, even if she was bothered by it, she's going to get over it relatively quickly. And the fact that this is months and months later, and she's still bothered by it, I'm just not buying it. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I won't go so far as to say the story shouldn't exist, but I think it's a little problematic. It doesn't fit the character, and I sort of don't see the point of the story.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy the hallucination. That being said, I did enjoy the art. I did enjoy the hallucinations, the color work, the talking horse, the dialogue, and all that. Like, you know, setting aside that it doesn't seem to make sense for the character, there was a lot I did like. You know, I think technically it's well done. But it's just, this is the wrong character. It's just the wrong plot for this character.
Yes.
But again, I think, like, story wise, it's actually done pretty well. Again, I really like the talking horse, and the relationship between Artemis and the horse, and the art's fantastic, and all that. So there's some redeeming qualities. But if you're an Artemis fan, and you're like, oh man, I don't get enough Artemis, let me be sure I pick up and Brave and the Bold.
Great character development on that horse. I tell you what. I've
never seen anything from this horse before, so yeah, I didn't mind.
It's a horse, of course.
Yeah, I didn't mind this. Like, the horse grows a tail at one point. It was like out there. It was out there.
Good grief.
The horse had a mermaid tail. It was cool.
Well, I know what your pick of the week is.
Yeah, please don't go that far. Maybe I'm trying to be a little bit of an apologist here, but yeah, maybe I'm trying to put lipstick on the pig.
On the horse, you mean?
On the horse, right? Yeah, lipstick on the horse, 100%. Well, the next story, as Rocky intimated, Michael W. Conrad telling a Sergeant Rock story. Again, I'm not sure why this is, much like the Batlash story. I'm not sure why this is in Batman Brave and the Bold. And I didn't really particularly care for it. It's almost assigning this supernatural like feel to Sergeant Rock, which I just thought was kind of weird, to be honest. So yeah, it was okay. I don't. It didn't. It was okay. It didn't really do much for me, to be honest.
Well, I like the name Private Stein, and of course Frank Castle's. You know, he's Sergeant Frank Castle. His first name's Frank, so Private Frank Stein. He's Frankenstein. Yeah. So it's a play on Frankenstein. I thought that was, and bear in mind, I don't think I've liked a single thing that Michael W. Conrad has written in me since his entire tenure of the DC universe. Straight up. I don't think I've liked a single thing until this. This was actually something I enjoyed. This was Frank Castle. It's building up the myth of Frank Castle of Easy Company. He's a guy he's a legendary soldier in World War II. In like 8 or 10 short pages here, we get the legend of Frank. Did I say Frank Castle? I meant I don't mean Frank Castle. Why am I blanking on his name?
Well, it's Sergeant Rock, but Frank Stein.
Yeah, no, is Frank Rock. Yeah. Frank Rock, obviously. Sergeant Rock, duh. Drew a blank there. But I thought it was just well done. And it even references Sergeant Rock and the Army of the Dead series there that was written by Bruce Campbell that we reviewed. And so it was a nice callback there. So Michael W. Conrad is recognizing that. And it's a good story. It shows how, Sergeant Rock's a kick-ass character. I thought the art was really good. Art by J.J. Holden or P.J. Holden and Mike Spicer on the colors. I thought it really worked well. I thought it was very well done. And yeah, I love Sergeant Rock whenever I see him. I think I seem to recall the last time I saw him was probably in that Bruce Campbell series. And before that, we saw him in Death Metal, where he played, but he played a decayed Sergeant Rock, which wasn't as cool. But
cut off at the waist. He was just a torso.
Yeah. But
yeah. All right, so last story, Black and White, Crown of 12 Tales, from writer Zach Thompson, Ashley Wood art, which is in black and white. It's very visceral, very suitable for the story. And yeah, this cult like kills the rat catcher and trying to become king of rats and whatever. It's a Zach Thompson story. So if you're familiar with Zach's work at all, he really leans into the body horror type story and what have you. So that's what this is. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if this is kind of the new status quo for the rat catcher. And again, DC editorial saying make the Batman villains more scary, I guess, for lack of a better term, make them more dangerous. This feels like it's right in line with that. So it was okay. Ashley Wood is a legendary artist, but not really my style. But again, I think the tone of the art here suits the story very well. So you have anything to add, Rocky?
Yeah, well, this you implied a new character, and I believe the Zodiac Master is a new villain, would be a new villain. And this Zodiac Master is this god of 12 tails, and he apparently killed the rat catcher. And the rat catcher, I think, I'm confusing the rat catcher is an established character in the Batman universe, right? In the DC universe. And I don't want to confuse rat catcher with Ragman, because that's what I earlier did in my headcanon. But so Ratcatcher, I didn't care. Who cared about Ratcatcher? I think he's got that one. He's on that one cover, the first appearance of Ratcatcher, speculator alert. Well, this is the death of Ratcatcher. I don't think anybody cares that the Ratcatcher is dead. Bring on the Zodiac Master. That's a hint of, it looks like this ends where, this ends with a question mark. Where's the Zodiac Master? He's probably going to show up elsewhere in the DC universe, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You have you heard some rumblings in the gossip mills? Is that the idea? Is to get Batman's Rogues Gallery a little bit more horrific, or is that just your speculation?
I I have heard that based on the success of the One Bad Day, where
Mm-hmm.
the editorial prompt there when they were inviting people to make pitches, they were like, okay, if you were to tell a Killing Joke like story for Ra's al Ghul or for Clayface, if there was like the one story that kind of epitomized, and because that was so successful, and that in a way was like, tell the most dangerous story. So there, I haven't heard anything concrete or what have you, but um, yeah, just kind of reading between the lines, it does seem like they're saying, well, uh, let's turn the dial up. Let's make things a little more dangerous for Batman. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, so moving on, we have Power Girl issue number 7. This is written by Leah Williams. Marguerite Sauvage is the artist. Becca Carey on letters. Let me first off by saying we have at times been critical of Marguerite Sauvage's art. A lot of times I'll liken it to like a children's storybook where the images just seem like they're pretty static, for lack of a better term. She's gotten so much better, and this is a perfect example. While she still uses kind of a very juvenile style here, it's purposeful because they're in this sort of fairy tale land called Frembia, and so that's the style that she's using. But the storytelling from panel to panel, the movement that's implied, is beautiful. Like at no point do I feel like these characters or renderings are stiff or like a snapshot in time, like I have felt about her line work in the past. So all credit to her for working harder on her storytelling and her transitions. And I think that it's just grown by leaps and bounds. Now, as far as this story, it's not a bad story by any stretch, but it does feel, like I said, a little bit juvenile, a little fairy tale, and that very well might be what they're going for here. Um, so if that's what they are going for, then I guess great job. They made it work. But yeah, I think it's only okay, and it feels very incongruent with the first arc we had, where there was some body horror, there was the Kryptonian disease and what have you, and line that looked horrific or whatever. Like you compare that to this, and it's like, is this the same series? So very interesting to choose from go to like one extreme to the other. And I will also say that this series, because this 2-parter here, or really 3-parter, because the silent issue tied in, and we both were really complimentary about that because so often they don't. Like part of it seemed like what they were trying to do, or was intimated last issue, was trying to differentiate between Supergirl and Power Girl because they're teamed up here. And just the way the story played out, if anything, they seem more interchangeable than ever.
Yeah.
Like it's not like any of them do something that's unique to them at any point. So yeah, I thought it was just kind of weird. You brought her in, you brought Supergirl in, you brought Kara in. So here's your chance to show why they're different. And instead, they just sort of seem like the same character. So, but anyway, it was enjoyable, and we'll see which direction this book takes. I have no idea. Is it going to lean in more toward younger readers? Is it going to go back toward more mature stuff? I don't know. I think Leah Williams is a very talented writer, but so far this book's been a little up and down for me. So, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I prefer. I thought Power Girl had a lot more potential, and I still do, because I really liked. I prefer the storylines dealing with Paige's Power Girl's past on the Earth 2 Krypton, and building on that mythology. And I do prefer the more traditional artistic style. I mean, we've got drastically different artistic styles. I much prefer the art when this series. I can't remember the name of the artist during her the last story arc there. But in any event, it's is it Pansica? Uh, Pansica?
Eduardo Pansica.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it
think
might
that
have been.
was. I think it
Let
was
me.
him. But
Yeah.
in any event, I want to give full props. I agree with you. I want to give full props to Marguerite Sauvage here. This is definitely in her wheelhouse, this style, and this is a fairy tale. This should look like a fairy tale because they're in a fairy tale land called Farimbia. And I'll compliment Leigh Williams. She writes a fairy tale here with all the component parts. You got Castle Malice, where Avis lives, and Supergirl and Power Girl got to rescue Queen Adrosis, who's got two idiot guards called Tragedy and Comedy, and it's kind of funny. And of course, all the people from our world are lured in through the use of a drug into Farimbia, where they can't escape. And when you're in Farimbia, you lose your power. So Power Girl and Supergirl don't have their powers, and they got to use their wits and everything else. And it's very juvenile. I don't know if that's the right word. You used it, but I know what you mean. It feels like a young adult. I would say even like this was like a young teen fiction. This doesn't feel. It's okay, but I'm gonna again. I compliments to. They accomplished what they set out to do, but I got to tell you. Would any editorial team at DC Comics ever dream of doing this in the pages of Superman or in the pages of Batman? I'm going to suggest they wouldn't dream of having do something like this. Out of the blue, you're going to have this jarring artistic change and have a little fairy tale like this. I don't think you'd see that. Because I think you'd risk fan backlash. Now, maybe that's just me, because I got to admit, when I first look at this, I got to tell you that to go from the type of covers, the Purian fanboy covers, I'm a Purian fanboy. I love Power Girl with the Brett, the whole 9 yards. I've said this before. To go from that covers to this is very jarring. But at the same time, it's a good story. It's a good story, the appropriate type of art for the story. But it's like it doesn't. I don't want this series to have an identity crisis, and it feels like it's sort of getting that a little bit. And it's like, if I didn't know better, there's sort of like some internal struggle going on at DC Comics regarding Power Girl, and they're not even sure if did they want this to be a Power Girl comic or a Supergirl comic. Are you sure you even like Power Girl? I mean, you changed your name from Karen Star to Paige, and now Supergirl's in it all the time. I mean, I'm starting to sound okay. Admittedly, I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but there's some truth to what I'm saying here. But again, I agree with you on the page. This story works, but I have to tell you, my expectations as a lover of Power Girl, this is diametrically not the Power Girl that I expected to read. It's okay, but I don't want this to continue moving forward. I don't want every issue to be like I'm reading a fairy tale. This feels like a story written for 12-year-olds, but knowing full well that no 12-year-old's going to buy it, only adults. And I don't know, you hoping to attract a new audience with this? I mean, because I love comics, I hope you do. It's not my cup of tea. That's fine. But it's just really weird. It's really, really weird. And, it's interesting. We've talked about this because we could talk about Batgirls. We could talk about, other DC titles where there seems to be this a little bit, where the art doesn't quite match the tone of the story. This one, at least, the art matches the tone of the story. And it's Leigh Williams and Marguerite Sauvage. They are a good fit. They are a good fit. But I'm wondering if Power Girl is the right title for them. But in any event, we'll see. I'm really curious to see where Power Girl is moving forward. The next issue promises to be House of Brainiac, and I got to tell you, I'm really looking forward to that. I hope they return to their previous artist. I'm pretty sure it's Pansica.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, according to credits, Pansica's back on it, and there's a gorgeous Mark Brooks alternate cover. So yeah, it looks like they're sort of back. So I don't know, maybe they weren't quite ready to start House of Brainiac. They needed something to fill in for 3 months. I don't know. So we'll see. Yeah. All right. Up next, we have Detective Comics number 1083 from writer Ram V. Riccardo Federici and Stefano Raphael are the artists. Colors by Lee Luffridge. Letters by Ariana Mayer. Could we finally be getting toward the end? I mean, this is Gotham Nocturne Act 3 and Elegy of Sand Part 3. Man, just when I feel like the story's maybe coming close to a conclusion, we get some interlude that just lasts forever. Story is just dragging. So anyway, give us your thoughts on this.
Well, I will say this. This has taken longer getting here than it should have. But I will say that Ram V, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I sound like a broken record, but I have always said I'm a sucker for a good metaphor, and I like good themes. And while the theme in this particular story and the journey that Ram V puts Batman on, this long journey, we are getting to the end. And I like this issue. And in particular, I think it's embodied up at one point. Batman says to Barbados here, because Batman is basically, he was hung and he's sort of like, he was taken into the desert by Talia al Ghul, where Batman is sort of, this is almost like Batman's 40 nights in the desert, like where, not to get religious, but where it's almost like Batman's being tested by the devil in the desert, but it's not, and it's, Barbados is there and Dr. Hurt is there as well. So just like the devil tempted Jesus in the desert, this is the devil tempting Batman, trying to pull him to the dark side and telling him, it's okay to fall. Let us take over. Your time is done. And Batman says, all I ever needed was the struggle. All I needed was to try. I have never been afraid to fall. And he says, people should not have to look up for salvation. They should only have to look around. And that embodies Batman. Batman doesn't think himself to be a god. Barbados is telling Batman, you can be a god. Let me take over. But Batman's not about being a god. He wants the people of Gotham to just look around them, to see the strength that is around them. They should not have to look up to anybody, even himself. And I really like that. And I think Batman more than ever, he embraced the idea that the power of Gotham City, that the Gotham really is about its people. And when you tie that into the Orgum coming into Gotham City and the Orgums with their machine or their dream machine or whatever the hell it was in the bowels of Gotham City, trying to create neural pathways amongst the subways of Gotham City and trying to take control of Gotham and the citizens and what have you. Well, no, Batman, of course, Batman defeating Barbados, overcoming the influence of Dr. Hurt and the devil. And in particular in this issue, Batman's return. I actually got a little bit of a chill at my spine because I loved it, because Renee Montoya in this issue has the question. She finds the evidence she needs through an iPhone the evidence she needs to bring charges against, or to ultimately bring down the Orgum Queen. And of course, she gets the help of Jim Gordon, and her and Jim Gordon are confronted by the Orgums. And just when a battle's about to ensue, Batman himself makes an appearance and comes, it's, bats everywhere, and Batman smashes down on a car, just because the Orgums are basically, they've sort of taken over the city. The crime rate has gone down, you could tell there's so many, the continuity nightmares, if you're trying to fit this in with the other Bat titles, forget about it. But the Orgums have taken over Gotham. Crime is supposedly down. But the people are maybe more docile. The people know that something's wrong. And the Question knows that something's wrong. And Jim Gordon knows that something's wrong. But Batman returns at the end after having defeated psychologically the devil, Dr. Hurt, and Barbados in the desert. And he returns with Talia. Talia helps him return to Gotham, and I really enjoyed how the main story ended with Batman slamming on that car. He has returned, and now from this issue forward, we know that Batman is about to kick some ass because he's overcome the power of the Asmir. He's overcome the influence of Barbados and the manipulations of Dr. Hurt, and I really like this. I really like this. It took us a little bit too long getting here. I think we could have shaved off 3 or 4 issues, quite frankly. But I like the symbolism. I like the theme. I like the the religious allegories are there if you choose to see them, and I choose to see them because they enhance the story in my head canon. And I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the backup too. But I'm curious as to your thoughts on the main story first.
Well, let me ask you right off the bat. Um, do you have any guess on how long this Ramvi run has been going? You mentioned it going a little too long. Maybe they could shave 3 or 4. Just a
Well,
ballpark guess, if you had to ballpark it.
well, I think it wasn't it when I moved my Detective Comics. I just finished organizing my. Was it 1061? It started 1061 or
Close.
1000.
Yeah, 1062
Oh,
was
okay.
the first issue.
Yeah,
So
it's a lot.
21 issues, nearly 2 full years,
Yeah.
that I would argue that Batman has been a cameo character in his flagship book. The book that he first appeared in, Batman has barely shown up. I think that's a problem. I really do. And don't get me wrong, there are times, like I said, where I have really enjoyed what Ram has done in this title. There's times I haven't liked, the retconning and going back to the beginnings of Gotham City and tying in the organs and what have you. And that stuff I could sort of, let slide. But I just think, man, 21 issues. It's just the pacing is, and I get that you're trying to make it epic and gothic and operatic, but I don't go to the opera, and there's a reason for that. It's not my particular cup of tea. So yeah, it's been a little rough. I gotta admit, it's been a little rough, but I'm glad we're getting to the end. I'm glad we're almost done, and yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. Hopefully, he's going to make up for Batman being gone for 21 issues, basically, and we'll get nonstop badass Batman, because you're right, when he slams on the hood of that car in the final panel, yeah, it just gives you chills. It's like, all right, he's finally back, and maybe he's back in a way better than ever, right? Um, there were some aspects of this that I was sort of looking forward to in terms of, okay, what is his connection to Barbados? Like, give us more context and more detail about that. And we haven't gotten any of that. Like, I mean, it's intimated that his connection to Barbados has been something that's allowed him to help defeat the Asmir, but it's not really clear. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. But anyway, this and Doctor Hurt character, he's. I mean, we can talk about it in the backup or whatever, but to me, he's just a plot device, not interesting. In the backup story here, it feels like he has whatever powers or whatever abilities or whatever knowledge he needs to have when he needs to have it. I don't think he's a good character, or at least he's not being used in the right way here. I mean, I know he was a character that was brought back by Grant Morrison. Maybe that's where it falls apart for me. I'm just not a fan of that Morrison run of Batman. I think it's poorly written. I think even worse than poorly written, it at times is inscrutable, and its worst failure is its pacing is, I think, just atrocious. But I know I'm in the minority. Many people love it, and it's beloved. And I, for the life of me, it's one of those series where I just cannot understand why people think that Morrison run is so good. Like it's just, but anyway, that's a different topic. Give us your thoughts on the backup. Maybe you saw it differently than me.
I just a quick thought on Grant Morrison's Batman run. I'm not a fan of it either. I was not a fan of it, but I'm a fan of what other writers have done with the characters that he's introduced. And I was never a fan of Barbados, but there were some cool things that Scott Snyder did with Barbados. I'm not a fan of Dr. Hurt, but I'm actually I like what Ram V or Dan Waters has done here with Dr. Hurt. I was not a fan of. I love Damian Wayne, but not I actually preferred the Damian Wayne that Peter Tomasi developed. I thank Grant Morrison for bringing Damian Wayne, but I think it was Peter Tomasi that made me love Damian Wayne. And so Grant Morrison brought a lot of things into the Bat universe that other writers have, I think, done better things with. So that's the way I look at it. So that's a double-edged sword, but I'll take it. I like the Dr. Hurt story here because I like the idea that Dr. Hurt he's set up all these people and he's given them almost their heart's desire, but only to take it back from them. It's like, be careful what you wish for. Dr. Hurt will grant it, and he'll even go so far as to train you to be a great person and then pull the rug out from under you and make your life a living hell. And what Dr. Hurt does here, what's so interesting, is that this one character, Selma, who ostensibly wants to get revenge. You think she wants to get revenge on Dr. Hurt. She actually claims to be Dr. Hurt. And she actually seems to be almost perhaps even a clone of Dr. Hurt. She's an embodiment of Dr. Hurt, and she wants to replace him. But as another character in the story says, this James character, Dr. Hurt, he says to Dr. Hurt, "You're evil, you're the anti-life, you're anti-everything that's good and pure and decent. And you even want to destroy yourself. You want a perfect version of you so you can look into its eyes as you kill it." And so Dr. Hurt, that's what the Selma character was for. Dr. Hurt is so depraved, he literally wants to kill a version of himself in the mind of this James character, who wakes up at the end of this story, and he's only to discover that he sees a military man and he's been experimented upon psychologically by this doctor, and he's not sure who the doctor's name is, but he asks, and you don't know who the doctor is, but you can guess it's Dr. Hurt. So it's interesting because I think the way that these backstory, Dan Waters and Ram V have coincided their stories with Dr. Hurt, as Batman is talking with Dr. Hurt in the desert and Barbados and overcoming their machinations, you can see just how it heightens, in my mind, Batman's victory over Dr. Hurt in the desert. And you see how powerful Dr. Hurt is with these other individuals in the backup. And I want to give a shout out to Ram V and Dan Waters, because they're doing a series called the One Hand and Six Fingers, where the Ram V story, One Hand, is written from the perspective of the detective, and the Six Fingers image story is written from the perspective of the serial killer. It's actually, both of them are on issue 2 right now. They're really good, and they're very good at collaborating and touching on each other's stories there. And you can see remnants of that ability to sort of intersect some of the stories here in Detective Comics. So I actually enjoy this issue of Detective Comics. I think we're finally getting somewhere, and I'm hopeful for a real banger of an ending, moving into issue 1089, which I think is going to be the final issue before September and the new DC, whatever it is, hits us.
Yeah, we'll see. It's definitely taken a long time to get there, but yeah, we'll see. All right, up next we have Alan Scott, Green Lantern, issue number 5, The Red Scare. This is from writer Tim Sheridan, Cian Tormey as the artist, Matt Herms and Hi-Fi on colors, Lucas Gattoni on letters. We get a little bit more context for the story here in terms of we find out that the government, the Soviet government, hasn't been 100% forthcoming with the Red Lantern. Surprise, surprise. And in fact, while he was being experimented on and dying over and over and being backed by the Crimson Flame, at some point the Soviet government decided he wasn't, as a soldier, wasn't stable enough. So they actually created sort of this Crimson Army, and they show up and they're ready to attack not only Alan Scott, but the Red Lantern himself. They're called the Crimson Host, and they're all introduced here. Comrade Kostra, the Countess, Professor Molotok, Proletariat, and Major Blaze of the Crimson Host. So really interesting, speculator alert, I guess, for, new characters showing up here from Tim Sheridan. And all I could think as I was reading this and how much I'm enjoying this, how much the relationship, the back and forth relationship between the Red Lantern and Green Lantern, as they've been confronting each other in these past couple issues. The Red Lantern was undercover and sort of seduced Alan Scott, undercover as Johnny Ladd. And you could tell that there are still some sort of unresolved feelings there for Alan Scott. And he's trying to, reach the Red Lantern. And at one point, he sort of has almost like an out-of-body type experience where he's having a conversation with, I guess for lack of a better term, the Green Flame. And it's trying to explain to him, what's going on and tell him about how the Red Lantern is being manipulated and what have you. All I could think was how excellent this characterization is from Tim Sheridan and how impressed I've been with the series and how much I've enjoyed the series overall. And then thinking back to the previous Tim Sheridan things that we had to cover in Teen Titans Academy and how that was such a mess and was all over the place and the characterization was lacking and what have you. And, the things that I heard about, for lack of a better term, editorial interference, I guess you'd say, with that series, and how this has been, this has been night and day. This doesn't even feel like the same writer. So you wonder how much truth there was to that and wonder what might have been with that Teen Titans Academy series had he just been left alone to write the series that he wanted to write. Anyway, I don't know if it really matters at the end of the day, because, regardless of what he wanted to write, we got what we got. Anyway, what do you think of this issue of Green Lantern?
I really liked it, and again, you said it. Speculator alert! This new group of the Crimson Host. I think they look awesome. I think they look really cool. Visually, they look fantastic. I mean, I gotta like you and I. It's very interesting because there's been some very vocal fellow comic book YouTubers who would very much disagree with our love for this series, and I don't know. I just think it's great. I love the characterization too. I think it's action packed. I think it possesses a high degree of verisimilitude. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially this issue explaining the history of the Starheart, and I like this new origin. I like linking it to the Guardians, of the standard traditional Green Lantern Corps, linking it to those Guardians, how they created a Starheart eons ago, and eventually this Starheart, its opposite was created. That's how you end up with the Emerald Flame, and its opposite, based on loneliness and despair, the Crimson Flame. It makes sense, and again, without going into all the details, it actually there's a tragedy to it, but it makes a lot of sense, and it's all embodied in the relationship between Alan Scott and the Red Lantern and I guess Johnny Ladd, and I think it works. It's an origin. I think it's a cool origin. I think it's grounded in post World War II. It's grounded in the Cold War. It's grounded in the way society was, homophobia, but it's done in a cool way. It's done in a cool way. This to me is, of all, for those people that will complain about certain LGBT or pride stories focusing on the alphabet as opposed to the story, this is a genuinely good story, and I think it's very well written. And I gotta say, we talked about the cliffhanger in Detective Comics when Batman's slamming on the car. I love this cliffhanger where Red Lantern says to Alan, "What about your friends? Friends I don't have." And all of a sudden, Jay Garrick says, "Yes, you do. Of course you do." And the Justice Society of America is there to help out Alan Scott, because that's what it's all about. And you know what? I want to just mention, there's a little bit of a mini controversy over in Marvel Comics with their allies this week, where they have their covers for LGBTQ covers, and it's the theme of allies, of various superheroes being allies to the LGBT cause. And there's some criticism by certain areas of the community that, it's inappropriate how Marvel did that. And I say nonsense. no matter who you are, regardless of your sexuality, you have friends, you have family, people who care for you and love you and will fight for you. And so does Alan Scott. Alan Scott might be different. Red Lantern might be different, but they got allies too. And you fight on principle. You fight, and so behind all of this is Alan Scott's got his allies. We have our allies. Nobody cares. I mean, at the end of the day, this is about people protecting people, heroes helping their friends. And you're not going to judge them because of their sexuality. And to be absolutely clear, Tim Sheridan is not telegraphing that in this issue. That's just a side story. They just happen to be characters that are LGBTQ, and their history enhances their origin. That's what I like about it. In fact, it makes it more memorable. It's one of the best origin stories probably I've read. I got to say, especially since it's revamped, it's better than the Golden Age origin. It's better. I mean, the original Golden Age origin of Alan Scott. People can Google it if you like. This one's better. I like it better. This one's done. It's more mature. It's more adult, and it's more entertaining. And it's not particularly difficult to catch on to. And the art's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to the next issue. I'm not sure. Is this a 6-issue series, or is this an ongoing? Do you know?
I think it's 6 issues. But let me double check. The other thing that's interesting is we've had such great Green Lantern stories, right? Between Philip Kennedy Johnson, in the modern Green Lantern stuff, Philip Kennedy Johnson, Jeremy Adams in the regular Green Lantern series.
Yeah.
And then kind of dovetailing with that is this, but then also we've had some great sort of Golden Age characters. Yeah, six issues. There's nothing solicited past issue 6, but between Sandman and this and stuff that we got from Jeff Johns, Lost Stargirl, Lost Children, what have you. Yeah, we've had some really great stories lately about these, this era of characters.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see how it all plays out in the long run, but yeah, it's fantastic. All right, up next we have Harley Quinn number 38, written by Tini Howard, Natasha Bustos on art, Nick Filardi on color, Steve Wands on letters. Feels a little bit like a one and done story. It's Harley's birthday. I thought the Natasha Bustos art worked very, very well. At least if you've been enjoying the Sweeney Boo art, because it's in that same kind of vein, a little more juvenile and what have you. And I don't know, maybe Rocky will enjoy this because it does seem like Harley and Ivy are getting back a little bit to their more villainous ways. Harley seems to want to take on this, how can I say, this new role, sort of, where she's going to be following supervillains, I guess, on their escapades, if you will, and then psychoanalyzing them afterwards. It's all kind of weird and strange, to be honest. So not sure how well it works, but pretty interesting nonetheless. So what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, I don't find it. It's not for me. It's not for me. I'm not a fan of the art. Natasha Bustos or Bustos on the art. It's all right, I guess. I got to tell you, for what it's worth, the body doubles here, the body doubles who are Carmen and Bonnie, they're actually far more interesting than the way that they're written here. I first became familiar with them in the pages of Resurrection Man. They're like kick-ass characters, and they were drawn so sexy there, and they're so awesome. They're kick-ass, and they're kind of deadly. They're not like they seem to be happy-go-lucky, just mischievous, sort of like lesbians. Mercenary bounty hunting lesbians is what Harley Quinn refers to them as. They're okay. Harley Quinn has this storyline just seems juvenile, as well as the art. Just Harley Quinn's after a multiversal tale that I couldn't make sense of. Now we get back here where Harley she's got the idea that she's in between occasionally sleeping with Poison Ivy. She wants to go out, team up with bad guys and then psychoanalyze them. Yeah. And tell them what's wrong with them. Like, so she tells the body doubles that one of them is codependent on the other. This is let me on the surface that might sound funny, but it isn't funny. There's no humor in that. It might sound good on the surface, but where's the humor in that? I guess you could find humor in that, but sort of the well, no, I guess if that's what Tini Howard wants to do, that's fine. But I don't I don't know. Here's my central conceit as a longtime reader. No matter who you put, the interesting thing about even the body doubles, I haven't seen the body doubles in probably 10, 12, 15 years since they were in the pages of Resurrection Man. I think that was New 52, so maybe 10, 11, whatever years ago. But I don't need to know, you know, have the characters do some action, have the characters just be themselves and engage, and through the characters' actions, I can infer their states of mind. I can infer what's wrong with them by what they do and how they interact with others. And so having an adventure and then at the end have Harley Quinn sort of psychoanalyze everything, I don't need that. And so, and particularly if it's a villain I already know. So, and not only that, you kind of pigeonhole yourself. Because what if I disagree with Harley? Because I don't like this tropey Harley, because the trend now for Harley Quinn stories seems to be that, well, she does come across, they write her like a blonde bimbo until at some point in the story she suddenly is smart, and it usually involves her psychoanalyzing somebody, and her psychoanalysis reveals that maybe she's not completely boneheaded and not a complete blonde bimbo. She actually does have some semblance of intelligence occasionally that pops up and helps her get her out of the predicament that she's in. But it's a trope that's been done to death. And I don't find it interesting anymore. And I don't know. I'm not interested in these types of stories. And I'm not interested in that as a story element. And I get that's what Tini Howard's going, but I don't find that to be particularly funny. It's sort of like with Selena Kyle with her 9 lives. That's a cool enough concept. I'm sort of involved in her 9 lives Catwoman storyline. I have issues with it, but I think it's kind of a cool concept, you know, in different ways. But this concept with Harley, if she's just going to psychoanalyze a bunch of villains with misadventures moving forward, that's not my cup of tea. And but hey, man, if it ends up being great and there's some hilarity, moments of hilarity, that might be great. But I don't know if we already know that Mr. Freeze, I mean, come on, man. Mr. Freeze, he's been psychoanalyzed to death, and he's had a lot of good writers in the last 3 or 4 years write Mr. Freeze stories. We even got a One Bad Day Mr. Freeze, kind of a controversial storyline. You and I disagreed as to it. I don't know if I guess having Harley Quinn take a crack at Mr. Freeze, psychoanalyzing him, maybe there's some interest there. I don't know. But I love the backup a lot more than the main story here. The backup I thought was great because it was some reading Mad Magazine, but I love the backup. But the main story, I really didn't interest me. I wasn't interested in the main story, but I really love the backup by Brandy and Stein. I thought it was really good. But I don't know.
Yeah, Brant and Stein, very, very Looney Tunes. We'll talk about it in a second. But just to be devil's advocate here, I don't know that I want to read a Harley comic where she's tagging along with supervillains on their capers and then psychoanalyzing them, because when you go to conventions, and I know you do at times, you go to conventions and do you see the panels where it's like the psychology of Harley Quinn or the psychology of Batman, and there are people up there that have their degrees in psychology that are like psychoanalyzing these characters. Well, if they were a real person, and I mean, I get it. Like, you're into comics and you went to school for psychology. I went to school for psychology, and so I get it. But at the end of the day, these characters aren't really written consistently because you have different writers and you're taking different things. I always find that to be, I don't know, it's just sort of silly. It's sort of silly to assign that sort of academia to character. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can examine comics and critique comics as if they're literature or whatever. It's fictional. But there are certain things you can analyze. But getting down to the nitty gritty of the character, I mean, I don't think people sit around and say, hey, I'm going to psychoanalyze, I don't know, Jane Eyre or Les Mis, or character from Les Mis or whatever. Like, I don't know, but these characters have been around a long time, and there are different iterations and what have you. But I don't know that. Yeah, that's something that I really want in a Harley Quinn comic. But on the other hand, I got to look at what Tini Howard has done so far, and we mentioned it when we talked about the previous issue, and basically said that Tini's run, for her entire run, has sort of been one story, right? This Harley multiversal story. She's a threat to the multiverse and what have you. At least this is far away from that. This is pivoting to something completely different. So
Yes.
I want to give her some credit for at least she tried that. That was sort of zany, fun Harley. Now maybe she wants to lean into the academic side of Harley, what have you. So I'll give her some credit for wanting to do something different and really kind of stretch who Harley is as a character and examine different aspects of her. How successful it might be, that's another story. And I will say the Sweeney Boo art sort of suited the zany thing that you were going for, and I don't know that Natasha Bustos is the regular artist going forward. But if you want to go to a more serious side of Harley and have her psychoanalyzing these supervillains, you're going to need a different artist. Because not that I enjoy Bustos' art very much, but it's not a serious art style.
Natasha was the same artist on Fire and Ice. Natasha Bustos.
Yeah, that's just not a style of art that I'm going to take seriously for a serious story. It's just not. Like, could you imagine if like Batman Hush was drawn by Natasha Bustos?
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to have the same impact. It just doesn't. It's very much a cartoon style or animation style, where you just I just can't take it seriously. Now for Brandt and Stein on this backup, which is very Looney Tunes inspired, very Roadrunner and Coyote. Like if you like those Looney Tunes cartoons, that's what we have here. And the part of the Coyote is being played by Harley Quinn, and the part of the Roadrunner is being played by Kite Man. And there's hardly any dialogue except for the booms and the thuds and the instead of Acme, Wile E. Coyote always ordered his stuff from the Acme Corporation. Harley's ordering from Wayne, Incorporated, or what have you. So other than that kind of Wayne on the box or the sound effects, there is no dialogue in this issue, and it is so much fun. It is just amazing, and the way Harley eventually wins the battle between the two is inspired. And just so you know that I'm not just pulling this out of my hat saying it's Looney Tune inspired. At the end, there's a little symbol that says "That's the end, folks," just like Looney Tunes used to have, where Porky Pig would bust out through the little sign and say, "That's all, folks." So very much Looney Tunes inspired, and DC can get away with it because obviously Looney Tunes is owned by Warner Brothers, DC is owned by Warner Brothers, so it's all under the same family. Because man, if Marvel tried to do this, I think it might be a little too close to Looney Tunes. They might get in trouble. But anyway, fantastic story. Love it.
I agree with you. Very well done. And I just want to make one comment add on to your earlier comments. It seems to me that a lot of the female characters of the DC universe are having artists draw them that do have more of a juvenile kind of art. Harley Quinn, and again, it's nothing against the style of art. It's just different for DC in the traditional house style. We got Sweeney Boo on Harley Quinn, whether Natasha Bustos, who was on Fire and Ice, and this issue Harley Quinn. We got Margaret Savage being a little bit more stylistic on Power Girl. Batgirls, we had Jorge Corona, and even Poison Ivy is written by J. Willow Wilson. That artistic style is different, but there's also a primer that's been released this week that will be a comic that we're probably going to review next. It's interesting, and I don't know. I would prefer a more traditional house style for these female characters in the DC universe, but they seem to be given artists that take a much more almost teenagery, like more juvenile approach, like you said, to use your words. But in any event, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but we're a couple of older white guys. Maybe we're just, going the way of the dodo bird. And if this
Yeah.
was, if this is working and bringing in more people to comics, okay, great. I have no problem saying, okay, but I don't think that's what's happening. And it's a little bit frustrating to me. So
Well, I wouldn't
anyways,
say Card art on Poison Ivy. It is different than traditional house style, but it is in
yeah,
no way juvenile. It's very,
yeah,
again, leading into body horror and what have you. And at least we
yeah,
have Daniel Sampere on Wonder Woman.
yeah.
And, as he said in the interview, it's tough for him to draw. That's the balance, right? You've got to make her sexy, but she's got to look strong, approachable, that sort of thing. So, yeah. But anyway, let's move on. Rocky mentioned it. Last book we're going to talk about in detail is Primer #1. Now, written by Jennifer Muro and Thomas Krajewski, and art is by Greta Lusky, letters by Wes Abbott. I do want to mention, so this is not a new story by any stretch of the imagination. So Primer was actually released for DC's young adult line in its entirety back in 2020. So, and it was very well received. And actually, my daughter, who at the time, I guess, was 9, read it, loved it, and to my eternal shame, begged me to read it, and because she wanted to do a podcast review on it, and I just never did. I never read it. I'm ashamed to admit, it was something I wanted to do, and I just never made the time because she's done the podcast with me a few times, and it's always been a lot of fun. Always in the back of my mind, I need to read that. I need to read that so we can do the podcast on it. And so now DC, because again, it was very successful in the YA line, they have decided that they're going to serialize it over 4 issues as singles. So this is the first issue, and it blew me. I was like, damn it, why didn't I listen to my daughter and read this already? Because I thought it was fantastic. So basically, this girl has superpowers. She's adopted by this family, and at the time, she doesn't have powers. It's her adopted mom works for some kind of high-tech laboratory, medical laboratory. So it's kind of hinted at that she's going to gain her powers through some sort of, laboratory accident or what have you. Her adopted stepfather or adopted father is, and I should say foster. She's being fostered. She's not actually being adopted yet, but foster child. But her foster father is very, very different, almost a polar opposite of her foster mother, who's very type A personality, scientist, whatever. He's an artistic guy. He's very, kind of happy-go-lucky, and which is much more like the character here, who seems to have a sort of a predilection for art and what have you. And she would sneak out at various times and spray paint and of her group home, and her hair is all multicolored and what have you, and she seems to be a very free spirit as well. Her name is Ashley, and I don't know, just it felt very heartfelt. There were some really fun moments. Ashley is a kind of an incorrigible character, I would say, but she comes across as likable, even though you can tell that she's been through trauma. I mean, it's not easy being a foster child. She seems to be around 10, 11, 12 years old, which as you get older, it becomes much harder to get adopted. A lot of families that adopt want to, have younger kids, babies, and what have you. And the older you get, the harder it becomes. So this is off to a really great start. The art is fantastic. It's a little bit more of a loose style, and the backgrounds look more like they're watercolor. But the body language, because it's a little stylized, the body language and the facial expressions are very well done. You can kind of tell what the characters are feeling or their attitude just by the smirk on their face or the slant of their eyebrows or the shape of their eyes. It's cartooning at its best. Kind of not unlike what we were just talking about with the Looney Tunes style Harley Quinn story. So I was blown away by this. I was super impressed. There's part of me that just wants to go and dig up my press copy of Primer and just read the whole thing. And then there's other part of me that's like, well, maybe do I want to experience it serialized? So who knows? I know I told my daughter that I read it, and she was right. It was fantastic. And she was on her way out the door to go to dance. So I'm sure when she comes home from dance, she's going to lay into me about, I told you so, and you should have read it, and blah, blah, blah. And rightfully so. She was 100% correct, because I thought this was fantastic. So what did you think of it, Rocky?
I really like this. I really like this. I recall an interview with Jennifer Muro, and where she said she talked about the challenge of coming up with a character and what powers, just the idea of what kind of powers do you give the character. And I got to tell you, my daughter Audrey, this character's name is Ashley. My daughter's name is Audrey. She's 10 years old, and when she plays with paints, she generally she's actually neat, but she can, of course, at times, surprise, surprise, still make a mess. And I actually thought this was a hell of a good idea for superhero powers. And this girl, Ashley, because it's so easy to picture a young kid with paint all over themselves, making a mess of themselves, painting something. And of course, what kid doesn't love everything they paint, even if they make a mess? They think they created a masterpiece. And I love the fact here that, all these paints at the beginning when she rescues the plane, she's got these paints, and the orange is the firepower, the red paint is strength, and the purple paint is invulnerability. So it appears as if each color of paint is a different power, and so it looks as if, and I'm inferring this because we're not expressly told, which I love, by the way, because Jennifer Muro doesn't spoon feed us. We have to look at the beautiful art, and we can see how Ashley has her powers. Clearly, she put this paint on. She puts purple paint on herself. She looks messy, but it gives her invulnerability. She puts red paint on herself. She has fire powers, which she uses to push up the airplane. This is something you can see the appeal that this would have, not only with kids, but also put a smile on the face of a couple of old guys like me and you. And I really like this. And I'm looking forward to picking this up. I'll probably buy 2 issues, one to bag and board and one to give to my daughter. And she'll probably end up painting all over it, which is so good. It's so good to do that once in a while, buy a comic book and not worry about its condition. Just let it get wrecked and enjoyed by a young kid. And I enjoy this. And what I also like about this is a character that Primer is a character that I can also imagine being drawn in a traditional house style and fitting into the DC universe. Not that DC wants to do that, but if they did, this story, it's a good story. She's got a foster family, Kitch and Yuka Nolan. Mother's a scientist, dad's a teacher. He's got a storage facility where he sort of hides away and does his own art that he shares with her. Yuka she's a scientist, a super genius. She's got a number of PhDs. She's a geneticist. She probably does some experimenting that ends up being mixed with the paints that presumably gives Primer her powers. I'm just inferring that again. We can infer so much just from this that I'm almost glad I never read it when it was an original compilation, because I can now enjoy looking forward to the next 3 issues. And so, yeah, this was very well done. And I feel a little bit hypocritical because I've spent a good portion of our reviews this evening sort of venting a little bit and maybe ranting a little bit against sort of like some younger looking art. And yet, along comes Gretel Lusky, and I agree with you. This is really good art, but this is something where, because of the good storytelling, the great art, the great expressions, the backgrounds, the colors, I'm looking forward to this. I'm actually looking for, there's a part of me, it's sort of like when Harley Quinn first made an appearance when she was just in the Batman animated universe, and all the hoopla when her first appearance in the mainstream DC universe. I'm actually kind of curious. This is a hell of a better character than Red Canary, I'll tell you that much. I mean, good God, I'm actually looking forward, not that it's going to happen, but I would welcome an appearance in the mainstream DC universe of this character called Primer. I'm actually impressed with this. So kudos to the creative team, Jennifer Muro, Thomas Krajewski, and art by Gretel Lusky. Very good job. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I've heard rumblings that she might be coming, at least there's going to be another Primer project. I think I've also heard rumblings, if I'm remembering correctly, that yeah, she may make an appearance in the regular DC. You know, it wouldn't be the first time they brought somebody from YA over, or you know, they've taken tons of characters from the main line and taken them over to YA. But yeah, I mean, this is just it's a lot of fun, and you know, maybe the difference in style and the reason it works is because this is the first time we're seeing Primer. We've never seen her, you know, nothing to compare it to, as opposed to other characters where, you know, like we've seen plenty of Power Girl and Supergirl in a more mature art style. And, you know, now we're getting something that's more animated, a little, looks like it's aimed more at younger readers. And, you know, again, not every comic has to be for us. We understand that. But with Primer, this is the only kind of iteration we've ever seen her in. So maybe that's why, you know, we're more willing to accept it. But anyway, that's all the single issues that are coming out this week from DC, everybody. In terms of collections, we have a few. Batman, Superman, World's Finest, Volume 1, The Devil Nezha, which I can't believe they haven't collected this already. But anyway, if you're wondering why we're always ranting and raving about Mark Waid's World's Finest, the first 5 issues, as well as the prelude story from Detective Comics 1050, are all included in the trade paperback that's out this week. We've also got Birds of Prey Progeny, which goes back to the classic Gail Simone run of Birds of Prey, collects issues number 92 through 103. We've got JL Ape. We had the April special last week. So this collects a ton of DC stories with apes. Legends of the DC Universe 19, JLA Annual 3, Batman Annual 23, Aquaman Annual 5, Wonder Woman Annual 8, Flash Annual 12, Superman Annual 11, Green Lantern Annual 8, and Martian Manhunter Annual 2. So it's a big summer crossover back in the day where the JLA got turned into apes. So if that's your thing, might want to pick that up. We also have I Am Batman Volume 2. That's the John Ridley run with Jace Fox as Batman. So they already had Volume 1 come out, the collected issue 1 through 5. This is the second half of the series, issues 6 through 10. And I think, and there's also an Absolute Joker, Absolute Luthor hardcover. Those are the Brian Azzarello versions of Lex Luthor, Origin of Lex Luthor, Origin of Joker, with Lee Bermejo covers. So they're both being collected together. So if you're a big fan of Lee Bermejo, like I am, it's very tempting, but I already have, I think, multiple versions of those books. So I don't know that I can afford, or if I want to spend the, whatever it is, $100 plus on that Absolute edition. But if you're so inclined, you can check it out. So, all right. Book of the week, Rocky. Easy choice, hard choice. What do you got?
This was a little bit of a, let me see here. I am going to, the truth is, I do think that Primer is the best of the week. I do think so. I'm going to be, but I want to go with this. I should probably leave it as Primer, but I'm going to go with Detective Comics because I'm going to go with Detective Comics because I think Primer's a little bit of a cheat, but she should be very happy. The writer Jennifer Muro should be very happy that Primer actually beat out Detective Comics. But I got to go with the superhero comic. Primer is just the first issue. But I'm going to stick with Detective Comics. So what about yourself?
Yeah, so it's Muro and Krajewski that are co-writers on that. And I don't care if it's a cheat. I'm going with Primer. Again, I'm looking forward to that conversation with my daughter where she gives me the big "I told you so." It's so good. I can't not pick Primer. Like if in the order that I read them, you know, it just so happened that Primer was the last one on, you know, in the press area where we go to read it. So I read it last. And I had, you know, more fun reading that and enjoyed that more. The only thing that came close was the backup Looney Tunes Harley story.
Yeah,
and
that's
again,
true.
Not to say that other things weren't good. Like I think this is the first time that we've had an Alan Scott Red Lantern or Alan Scott Green Lantern rather issue that's come out where I haven't picked it as my book of the week, and it was very, very good. And I also thought that the Batman Dark Age was a very intriguing start. But yeah, and just in terms of quality in the storytelling, the dialogue, the art, like from first page to last page, yeah, I couldn't not pick Primer. So I don't care that it's a reprint. I don't care that it's only, one part of a graphic novel that was already released 4 years ago or whatever. It's a single issue. It's out this week, and I'm picking it. Damn it, because
it's a good choice.
Yeah. So yeah, when you were saying I should probably Primer, I was like, don't worry, I'll cheat. I'll pick Primer.
Okay.
Okay, so don't forget, everybody, Daily Spawn is still ongoing over on the Comic Source YouTube channel, or if you have stumbled across us on YouTube and you're like, oh, I want to listen to other audio-only content, there's literally thousands and thousands. I think we're approaching 3,000 audio-only episodes over on the Comic Source. So just go to wherever you get your podcasts, do a search for the Comic Source, subscribe, go back to listen to all those past interviews and reviews and all that great stuff that we have. And if you're listening to us audio only, or you've become a recent audio only subscriber due to some of the great interviews we've had recently, like Natalie Maines, Tom King, and you're like, oh, what do you mean YouTube channel? Every week on Rocky's YouTube channel, which is Comic Space Boom ! Go to YouTube, put that in, you'll find it. We always do the DC Spotlight, and he's got other great past content on there as well. So fantastic channel to subscribe to, and be sure you ring that notification bell so you know when new content comes out. Leave comments below this episode. We love to engage in the comment section, hear other people's thoughts on the books of the week as well. So don't forget to subscribe and like this video and do all that cool stuff that really helps out YouTube content creators. So we appreciate it as always. Any last thoughts, Rocky?
I'm glad we ended talking about Primer because it made me feel better about the week.
Yeah, definitely worth your time, everybody. So go and check it out. And that's going to do it for this episode. So we appreciate you joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.